Hello everyone and welcome. This is Muse speaking. We have handpicked a wonderful story for today. What if Naruto was the defense against the dark arts teacher and taught Harry how to use Sage Mode? New videos drop regularly, so subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated. And don't forget to like if you enjoy the story. Shall we begin? Here goes. Chapter 1, The Shinobi Professor. The Scarlet Steam engine whistled as it pulled into Hogsmeade Station, its familiar sound doing little to lift Harry Potter's spirits. Through the rain-streaked window, he could make out the outline of the thestral-drawn carriages waiting to carry students to the castle. Harry's stomach clenched. This year, he could see the thestrals. "You all right, mate?" Ron asked, shoving the remains of a chocolate frog into his mouth. Harry nodded mechanically. "Fine." Hermione gave him a concerned look but said nothing as they gathered their belongings. The Hogwarts Express had been a 6-hour exercise in whispers and stares. The Daily Prophet had spent the summer painting Harry as either delusional or a dangerous liar. His claims about Voldemort's return had made him a pariah among most of the student body. As they stepped onto the platform, the September rain intensified, sending students scurrying toward the carriages. Harry paused, transfixed by the skeletal, winged creatures that stood between the carriage shafts. "What are you looking at?" Ron asked, following his gaze. "The horses pulling the carriages." Ron frowned. "What horses?" "I can see them too," came a dreamy voice from behind. Luna Lovegood stood there, her radish earrings swinging as she tilted her head. "You're just as sane as I am." Harry wasn't sure if that was reassuring. "They're called thestrals," Hermione whispered as they climbed into a carriage. "Only visible to those who've witnessed death." Harry's mind flashed to Cedric Diggory's lifeless eyes staring up at the night sky in that graveyard. He swallowed hard and looked away. The carriage lurched forward, and Harry gazed up at Hogwarts as it came into view. For the first time, returning to the castle didn't feel like coming home. The Great Hall buzzed with the usual start-of-term excitement, but Harry felt disconnected from it all. At the staff table, he noticed several empty seats, including the one traditionally reserved for the defense against the dark arts professor. "Wonder who they've got for defense this year," Ron said, following Harry's gaze. "Hope they're better than Lockhart. Or not secretly working for you-know-who," Hermione added. As if on cue, the massive oak doors of the Great Hall swung open. Conversations died as every head turned. Professor McGonagall led the nervous first-years toward the sorting ceremony, but it wasn't the children who had captured everyone's attention. Behind McGonagall walked a man unlike any teacher Hogwarts had seen before. Tall and athletic, he moved with a casual confidence that somehow made him seem both relaxed and impossibly alert. Spiky blonde hair framed a face marked with 6 distinctive whisker-like scars, 3 on each cheek. Instead of robes, he wore a high-collared black and orange jacket, dark pants, and what appeared to be combat boots. A red cloak with black flame patterns hung from his shoulders. Most striking was his presence. He radiated energy that seemed almost tangible, like standing near a bonfire. "Blimey," Ron breathed, "who's that?" "Foreign, obviously," Hermione whispered. "Look at his headband." The stranger wore a metal plate secured to his forehead with a black cloth band. Etched into the metal was a symbol resembling a stylized leaf. As the first-years assembled before the sorting hat, the blond man took the vacant seat next to Professor Flitwick, immediately engaging the diminutive charms teacher in animated conversation. His smile was broad and genuine, and he gestured enthusiastically as he spoke. After the sorting concluded, Dumbledore rose to his feet. The hall fell silent. "To our newcomers," Dumbledore said, arms extended in welcome, "welcome. To our old hands, welcome back. There is a time for speech-making, but this is not it. Tuck in." Food appeared on the golden plates, and the Great Hall erupted in appreciative chatter. Harry tried to eat, but his appetite had been inconsistent since June. Instead, he kept glancing at the staff table, where the blonde stranger was now demolishing an impressive amount of food with obvious enjoyment. "Who do you reckon he is?" Harry asked. Defense against the dark arts teacher, has to be, Ron replied through a mouthful of potatoes. Only open position, isn't it? He doesn't look like any wizard I've ever seen, Hermione observed. When the desserts finally disappeared, Dumbledore rose again. Now that we are all digesting another magnificent feast, I beg a few moments of your attention for the usual start-of-term notices. First years ought to know that the Forbidden Forest is out of bounds to students, and a few of our older students ought to know that as well. Harry, Ron, and Hermione exchanged guilty smiles. Mr. Filch has asked me to remind you that magic is not permitted in corridors between classes, nor are a number of items, the full list of which can now be found affixed to Mr. Filch's office door. Dumbledore cleared his throat. We have had a change in staffing this year. I am pleased to introduce our new defense against the dark arts teacher, who comes to us as part of a groundbreaking international magical exchange program. The blond man rose to his feet, a broad smile on his face. Please welcome Professor Naruto Uzumaki, who joins us from the Hidden Leaf village of Konoha. Polite applause rippled through the hall, punctuated by curious whispers. Hidden Leaf Village? Hermione repeated. I've never read about that in any magical geography text. Thank you, Headmaster. Naruto's voice carried easily, his accent unusual but his English fluent. I'm excited to be here. I've heard Hogwarts has the best students in the wizard world, and I can't wait to see what you can do. Just a quick thing, you can call me Professor Naruto. My last name's a mouthful for most of you, you know. His enthusiastic informality contrasted sharply with the usual professorial demeanor, causing several students to giggle. Naruto grinned, seemingly pleased by the response, and sat back down with a slight bow. Professor Uzumaki, Dumbledore continued, comes to us with unique expertise in defensive techniques that differ significantly from traditional wizarding approaches. I trust you will all benefit from his considerable experience. Harry noticed several professors exchanging glances. Professor McGonagall's lips were pressed into a thin line, while Snape looked even more sour than usual. Tryouts for house Quidditch teams will take place on the... Dumbledore stopped speaking, his attention drawn to a short, toad-like woman in pink who had risen from her seat at the far end of the staff table. She gave a small hem, and made it clear she intended to make a speech. Surprise flashed across Dumbledore's face before he smoothly sat down, giving her his full attention. Other staff members were less successful at hiding their shock. Professor Sprout's eyebrows had disappeared into her flyaway hair, and Professor McGonagall's mouth was thinner than Harry had ever seen it. Thank you, Headmaster, the woman simpered, for those kind words of welcome. Her voice was high-pitched and breathy, like a little girl's. Harry disliked her immediately. The Ministry of Magic has always considered the education of young witches and wizards to be of vital importance. Each headmaster has brought something new to this historic school, and that is as it should be. However, progress for progress's sake must be discouraged. A balance between old and new, between tradition and innovation, as the woman, Dolores Umbridge, senior undersecretary to the minister, continued her tedious speech, Harry noticed Professor Naruto watching her with narrowed eyes. The friendly demeanor had vanished, replaced by a calculating intensity that transformed his face. For a brief moment, Harry thought he saw the man's blue eyes flash red. Pruning wherever we find practices that ought to be prohibited. Umbridge sat down. Dumbledore and the staff applauded politely, though Professor Naruto merely crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. Thank you, Madam Umbridge, for those illuminating words, Dumbledore said, bowing to her. Now, as I was saying, Quidditch tryouts. What does it mean? Harry whispered to Hermione. It means the Ministry is interfering at Hogwarts, she replied, her eyes still fixed on Umbridge. Great, Harry muttered. Just what we need. The first defense against the dark arts class of the year had the fifth-year Gryffindors buzzing with speculation. They filed into the classroom to find it drastically altered. The desks had been pushed against the walls, creating a large open space in the center. The curtains were drawn back, allowing sunlight to flood the room, and the walls had been adorned with unfamiliar symbols and diagrams. Most striking was the absence of the new professor. "Maybe he's pulling a Moody," Seamus suggested. "Waiting to make an entrance." "Or he's lost," Dean added. "Castle's confusing if you're new." A whoosh of air made them all turn. Professor Naruto stood in the open window, balanced casually on the narrow sill 3 stories above the ground. His red cloak billowed behind him. "Good morning," he said cheerfully, seemingly oblivious to the precarious position. With a fluid movement that defied gravity, he flipped forward and landed lightly in the center of the classroom. "Sorry I'm late. Still getting used to this castle, it's huge, you know." The class gaped at him. Lavender Brown let out a small squeak of amazement. "How did you?" began Dean Thomas. "We'll get to that," Naruto promised with a grin. He looked around at them. "No need to stand against the walls. Come on, make a circle around me." Hesitantly, the students formed a rough circle in the center of the room. Naruto nodded approvingly. "First things first, books away, wands out." A ripple of excitement went through the class. After Umbridge's theory-only approach in their previous session, this was a welcome change. "Professor," Hermione said, raising her hand, "will we be following the ministry-approved curriculum for defense against the dark arts?" Something flickered in Naruto's eyes. "I've looked at it. And no, we won't be." Several students exchanged nervous glances. "But Professor," Umbridge said, Parvati began. "Madam Umbridge has her approach, and I have mine," Naruto interrupted, still smiling but with a firmness in his voice. "Headmaster Dumbledore hired me to teach you how to defend yourselves, and that's what I'm going to do." He walked to the center of the circle. "In my world, we have a saying, a ninja who cannot use ninjutsu can still be a splendid ninja. What that means for you is that magic is only one tool for defense. Your body, your mind, your instincts, these are weapons too." "But we're wizards," Seamus objected. "We fight with magic." "And what happens when someone disarms you?" Naruto asked, his voice suddenly serious. "Or breaks your wand? Or uses a spell that blocks your magic? Are you helpless then?" The class fell silent. "I've been briefed on what's happening in your world," Naruto continued, his blue eyes scanning each face. "Dark wizards don't play fair. They don't follow rules. If you want to survive, neither can you." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Unlike the adults who'd been tiptoeing around the subject of Voldemort all summer, Naruto was addressing the threat head-on. "Today, we'll start with something basic, awareness." Naruto reached into a pouch at his hip and pulled out a handful of small rubber balls. "I'm going to throw these at you. Your job is to dodge or deflect them with your wand. No shields or protective spells, just movement and basic deflection." Before anyone could protest, Naruto's arm blurred. A rubber ball bounced off Ron's forehead. "Ow!" Ron rubbed the spot, glaring. "Too slow," Naruto said cheerfully. "Come on, everyone spread out a bit more." What followed was 30 minutes of chaos as Naruto lobbed balls at them with increasing speed and accuracy. At first, most students were hit repeatedly. Gradually, they began to improve, ducking, sidestepping, and occasionally deflecting the projectiles with well-timed wand movements. Harry, whose Quidditch reflexes gave him an advantage, managed to avoid most of the balls. He noticed Naruto watching him with interest. "Good," Naruto called eventually. "Now for part 2. He formed a strange hand sign, fingers interlaced in an unfamiliar pattern. With a puff of smoke, 3 identical copies of Naruto appeared beside him. Gasps and exclamations filled the room. "Wicked!" Dean exclaimed. "How'd you do that without a wand?" "It's not magic, at least, not your kind," one of the Narutos explained. "This is a ninja technique called the Shadow Clone Jutsu." All 4 Narutos grinned identically. "Now dodge this." The clones began circling the group, throwing balls from multiple angles simultaneously. The challenge increased exponentially, and soon even Harry was struggling to avoid the barrage. After another 15 minutes, Naruto called a halt. The clones disappeared in puffs of smoke, and the original, at least, Harry assumed it was the original, gestured for everyone to gather around. "Not bad for a first try," he said. "Most of you improved a lot just in this session. This exercise teaches 3 crucial skills: spatial awareness, reaction time, and making decisions under pressure. We'll keep building on these." Lavender raised her hand timidly. "Professor, will we learn how to make copies of ourselves like you did?" Naruto laughed. "That technique requires chakra control that takes years to develop. But there are other skills more accessible to wizards that I can teach you." "What's chakra?" Hermione asked, her curiosity evident. "The energy system used in my world," Naruto explained. "It's similar to your magical core, but harnessed differently. Instead of channeling it through wands, we direct it through our bodies using hand signs and physical techniques." He held up his hand, and to everyone's amazement, a swirling ball of blue energy formed above his palm. It glowed with intense light, spinning rapidly and emitting a soft hum. "This is the Rasengan, a concentrated form of chakra. It's one of my signature techniques." The class stared in awe as Naruto closed his hand, dissipating the energy. "For homework, I want you all to practice awareness. Notice your surroundings, count exits when you enter rooms, observe who's near you. And," he grinned mischievously, "try to dodge anything thrown at you." As the class gathered their things, buzzing with excitement about the unusual lesson, Naruto called out, "Harry, could you stay back a moment?" Harry exchanged curious glances with Ron and Hermione before nodding. "We'll wait outside," Hermione promised. When the classroom had emptied, Naruto leaned against his desk, studying Harry with interest. "You've got good reflexes," he said. "Faster than most of your classmates." "I play Quidditch," Harry explained. "Seeker." Naruto nodded. "The flying sport with the little golden ball, right? Dumbledore mentioned you're exceptional at it." His expression grew more serious. "But that's not why I asked you to stay." Harry tensed, bracing for questions about Voldemort or the events in the graveyard. "When you were dodging, I noticed something interesting about your magical signature," Naruto continued. "It has an unusual resonance, almost like it's attuned to natural energy." "Natural energy?" Harry repeated, confused. "In my world, certain individuals can draw power from nature itself, blending it with their own chakra to enter a state called sage mode." Naruto's eyes took on a distant look. "It's an advanced technique, rare even among accomplished shinobi. What does that have to do with me?" "I think you might have the potential for something similar with your magic." Naruto straightened. "Dumbledore told me about your connection to the dark wizard who's returned. He believes you'll need every advantage in the coming conflict." Harry stared at him. "You actually believe Voldemort's back? You don't think I'm making it up?" Naruto's expression hardened. "I've faced evil before, Harry. I know what it looks like, how it operates. And I know what it does to those who stand against it." He tapped his stomach absently. "Your headmaster brought me here because my world has faced threats similar to what yours is facing now. So what are you suggesting?" Harry asked, a mix of wariness and curiosity in his voice. "Extra training," Naruto said simply. "Outside regular classes. I can teach you techniques that might help you channel this natural affinity you seem to have. Like making those copies of yourself?" Naruto chuckled. "No, that requires chakra, which wizards don't develop the same way shinobi do. But there are other methods, ways to enhance your magical abilities by drawing on the natural energy around you." Harry hesitated. After the events of the previous year, he was wary of special attention from defense professors. Yet something about Naruto felt different, more open, more genuine than the false Moody had been. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Naruto nodded, seeming satisfied. Good. That's all I ask. He glanced toward the window. You should get to your next class. If you decide you're interested, come find me on Saturday morning. Early, before breakfast. As Harry turned to leave, Naruto added, "One more thing, Harry. The ministry woman, Umbridge. Be careful around her. She reminds me of certain political types from my world. The kind who smile while they stick a kunai in your back." Harry nodded grimly. "I know exactly what you mean, Professor." The staff room was tense when Naruto entered that evening. Conversations halted as he closed the door behind him, and several professors regarded him with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. "Ah, Professor Uzumaki," McGonagall said crisply. "We were just discussing the term's curriculum." "Just Naruto is fine," he replied with a smile, dropping into an armchair. "Or Professor Naruto, if you need to be formal." "I understand you conducted your first classes today," Flitwick said, perched on his specially heightened chair. "How did you find our students?" Before Naruto could answer, the door opened again, and Dolores Umbridge entered, clipboard in hand. Her saccharine smile didn't reach her eyes as they fixed on Naruto. "Good evening, professors," she said sweetly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Dolores," McGonagall replied stiffly. Professor Uzumaki was about to share his impressions of his first day teaching. "Indeed?" Umbridge turned to Naruto. "I would be most interested to hear about your unorthodox methods." Naruto's smile didn't falter. "The students were great. Quick learners, especially when they realized I was actually going to teach them practical defense." "Practical defense?" Umbridge's voice sharpened. "I was under the impression that the ministry curriculum clearly emphasized theoretical knowledge as the foundation for this year's OWL students." "Theory has its place," Naruto agreed easily. "But I've found that dodging an attack works better than reciting a textbook definition of one." Several professors poorly disguised their amusement. Professor Sprout made a suspicious coughing noise, and even Snape's lip curled slightly. "I see," Umbridge said coldly. "And may I inquire as to what magical authority granted you certification to teach defense against the dark arts? The ministry has no record of your qualifications." "I don't have any, by your standards," Naruto replied frankly. "Where I come from, we don't use wands or incantations. But I've been fighting dark forces since I was 12 years old, and I've trained hundreds of shinobi who are still alive because of what I taught them." "Shinobi?" Umbridge repeated with disdain. "I'm not familiar with the term." "Ninja," Naruto clarified. "Warriors trained in combat, stealth, and various techniques using chakra, are equivalent of your magical energy." Umbridge's eyes narrowed. "Muggles, then. You're teaching Muggle fighting techniques to wizarding children." "Not exactly," Naruto said, his voice still pleasant but with an edge underneath. "The techniques I use go far beyond what Muggles, non-magical people in my world, can achieve. But yes, some aspects involve physical training. This is precisely why the ministry has concerns about Dumbledore's creative staffing choices," Umbridge said, addressing the room at large. "Hogwarts has standards to maintain. Educational Decree 22 clearly states, my appointment was approved by the International Confederation of Wizards as part of the New Dimensional Exchange Initiative," Naruto interrupted. "Your ministry signed the agreement last month. I have the documentation if you'd like to see it." Umbridge's smile grew more fixed. "Nevertheless, as High Inquisitor of Hogwarts, I will be observing your classes to ensure they meet ministry standards." "You're welcome anytime," Naruto said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just be ready to participate. I don't allow spectators in my classroom, everyone learns by doing." A charged silence fell over the room. Finally, Professor McGonagall cleared her throat. "I believe it's nearly time for dinner. Shall we proceed to the Great Hall?" As the professors filed out, Naruto found himself walking beside Snape, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. The High Inquisitor will not be easily deterred, Snape said quietly. She has the minister's ear and his authority. I've dealt with politicians before, Naruto replied. In my experience, they back down when confronted with something they don't understand. Snape's black eyes studied him. And what exactly are you, Uzumaki, that the ministry wouldn't understand? Naruto smiled enigmatically. Someone who's contained monsters far worse than bureaucrats. He glanced at Snape. Dumbledore told me about your role. Don't worry, I know what it's like to wear a mask. He walked ahead, leaving Snape staring after him with an unreadable expression. Harry couldn't sleep. The dormitory was filled with the sounds of his housemates' steady breathing, but his mind raced with thoughts of Naruto's offer, Umbridge's interference, and the constant background anxiety about Voldemort's return. After tossing and turning for what felt like hours, he grabbed his invisibility cloak and the Marauder's map, slipping out of bed silently. The common room was deserted, the fire reduced to glowing embers. He climbed through the portrait hole, ignoring the fat lady's sleepy protests, and made his way through the darkened corridors. He had no particular destination in mind, he simply needed to move, to breathe air that wasn't thick with the weight of nightmares waiting to claim him. The map showed Filch patrolling the third floor, Mrs. Norris on the second, and Snape in his office in the dungeons. Harry took a route that avoided them all, eventually finding himself at the astronomy tower. The night was clear, stars scattered across the velvet sky like diamonds. He was about to sit down when he noticed a dot on the map, moving rapidly across the grounds toward the Forbidden Forest. The label read, Naruto Uzumaki. Curious, Harry descended the tower and made his way to a window overlooking the grounds. In the moonlight, he could just make out a figure in a billowing cloak approaching the tree-line. On impulse, Harry decided to follow. He knew it was foolish, breaking curfew to spy on a professor, but something about Naruto intrigued him. The man was unlike any wizard Harry had encountered, and his offer of special training nagged at Harry's thoughts. By the time Harry reached the edge of the forest, Naruto had disappeared among the trees. Harry hesitated, looking down at the map. The dot labeled, Naruto Uzumaki, was stationary now, in a small clearing not far inside the forest. Taking a deep breath, Harry entered the trees, his wand lit with a soft lumos to guide his way. He moved as quietly as possible, grateful for the invisibility cloak that concealed him. As he approached the clearing, Harry extinguished his wand and crept forward silently. What he saw made him freeze in amazement. Naruto stood in the center of the clearing, but he looked different. His eyes had changed, now yellow with horizontal, toad-like pupils. Orange pigmentation surrounded his eyes like natural markings. He was perfectly still, yet somehow seemed more connected to his surroundings than Harry had ever seen anyone be. Suddenly, without warning, Naruto vanished. Before Harry could process this, a voice spoke directly behind him. It's dangerous to wander the forest at night, Harry. Even under an invisibility cloak. Harry whirled around, his heart pounding. Naruto stood there, eyes still transformed, regarding him with a mixture of amusement and concern. How did you, Harry began, then stopped as Naruto reached out and gently pulled the cloak off him. In sage mode, I can sense all living energy around me, Naruto explained, his eyes fading back to their normal blue. Your cloak hides you from sight, but not from natural energy detection. Is that what you were doing? This sage mode? Naruto nodded. I need to maintain my skills, even away from home. He studied Harry curiously. What brings you out here past midnight? Couldn't sleep, Harry admitted. Saw you on the map heading into the forest. Map? Naruto raised an eyebrow. Harry hesitated, then pulled out the Marauder's map. It shows everyone in Hogwarts, where they are, what they're doing. Naruto whistled appreciatively as Harry demonstrated. That's an impressive tool. In my world, we'd call this high-level intelligence gathering. He handed the map back to Harry. You're full of surprises, Harry Potter. So are you, Professor. Harry gestured to where Naruto had been standing. What exactly were you doing? Your eyes changed, and you seemed different. Sage mode is a state where the user draws in natural energy and blends it with their own chakra, Naruto explained. It enhances all abilities, strength, speed, sensory perception. But it requires perfect stillness and concentration to gather the energy correctly. And that's what you think I might be able to learn? Something similar, Naruto confirmed. Your magical signature has a unique resonance that reminds me of natural energy. I think you might be able to develop a wizarding version of Sage mode. Harry considered this. Why me, though? Why not teach this to everyone? Naruto's expression grew more serious. Not everyone has the capacity for it. It's rare even in my world. He paused. And from what Dumbledore's told me, you'll need every advantage in the fight that's coming. The mention of Dumbledore sent a flash of anger through Harry. The headmaster had been avoiding him since his arrival at Hogwarts, refusing to meet his eyes or speak to him directly. Dumbledore's been ignoring me all term, Harry said bitterly. Naruto seemed to consider his words carefully. Sometimes leaders have to maintain distance for reasons that aren't immediately obvious. I've been there myself. He looked up at the stars. But that doesn't make it hurt any less when you're the one being kept at arm's length. Something in Naruto's voice suggested personal experience, and Harry felt a surprising connection to this strange professor from another world. I'll do it, Harry said suddenly. The training. Naruto smiled. Good. Saturday morning, before dawn. Meet me by the lake. He glanced toward the castle. Now, you should get back before someone less understanding finds you out of bed. Harry nodded, pulling the invisibility cloak back around his shoulders. Oh, and Harry. Naruto added. Try to actually sleep. Training will be much harder if you're exhausted. As Harry made his way back to Gryffindor Tower, his mind was calmer than it had been in months. For the first time since Voldemort's return, he felt a glimmer of hope, not just that he might survive what was coming, but that he might actually be ready for it. In the deepest part of the Forbidden Forest, where even the centaurs rarely ventured, a hooded figure knelt before a small fire. The flames cast eerie shadows across a face half hidden beneath the hood, a face marked with strange, rune-like scars. The shinobi has arrived at Hogwarts, the figure spoke, seemingly to the flames themselves. Just as you predicted. The fire flared suddenly, taking on an unnatural purple hue. Within the flames, a distorted face appeared, cruel eyes set in features that seemed to shift between human and something else. And the boy? The face in the fire asked, its voice a sibilant whisper. Potter has already begun to trust him, the hooded figure reported. The Uzumaki has offered training. A cold laugh emanated from the flames. Excellent. Let them forge their connection. It will make our work easier when the time comes. The ministry is interfering as well, the figure continued. Their representative watches the shinobi closely. Fudge's lackey is an unwitting ally, the face dismissed. Her disruption serves our purpose. The hooded figure hesitated. There's something else. The shinobi entered a meditative state tonight, something he called Sage mode. His chakra signature expanded dramatically. The flames pulsed with sudden intensity. You were not detected? No. I maintained the concealment jutsu you taught me. Good. The flaming visage seemed to consider this information. Continue monitoring them. The convergence of our worlds creates opportunities. When the ritual is complete, both the boy who lived and the Ninetales Jinchuriki will serve greater purposes than either of their prophesied destinies intended. The flames died abruptly, plunging the forest into darkness. The hooded figure rose, eyes glinting with an unnatural light. As you command. Lord Orochi. The next morning at breakfast, Harry felt more refreshed than he had in weeks. Despite returning to his dormitory well after midnight, he'd fallen into a deep, dreamless sleep. You look better, Hermione commented as she buttered her toast. Feel better, Harry admitted. I've decided to take Professor Naruto up on his offer of extra training. Ron looked up from his heaping plate of eggs and sausage. What kind of training? Harry explained what Naruto had told him about natural energy and the possibility of a wizarding equivalent to Sage Mode. That sounds fascinating, Hermione said, her academic interest piqued. I've never read anything about wizards drawing energy from nature directly. Our magic comes from our magical cores. Maybe it's something only done in his world, Ron suggested. Or maybe no one here has tried it properly, Harry countered. Their discussion was interrupted by the arrival of the morning mail. Hundreds of owls swooped into the great hall, dropping letters and packages to their recipients. A large brown owl landed in front of Hermione, carrying a copy of the Daily Prophet. Hermione paid the owl, unfolded the newspaper, and gasped. What? Harry and Ron asked simultaneously. Listen to this, Hermione said, reading aloud. Ministry appoints High Inquisitor at Hogwarts. In a surprise move last night, the Ministry of Magic passed Educational Decree 23, which creates the new position of Hogwarts High Inquisitor. This position will be filled by Dolores Umbridge, who will have powers to inspect her fellow educators and ensure that they meet Ministry standards. Inspect her fellow educators? Ron repeated. You mean she's going to judge the other teachers? That's exactly what it means, Hermione said grimly. It's the Ministry's first step toward taking control of Hogwarts. Harry glanced up at the staff table. Umbridge sat there in her fluffy pink cardigan, sipping tea with a self-satisfied smile. At the far end of the table, Naruto was engaged in animated conversation with Hagrid, who had returned from his mysterious mission just the previous evening. Wonder what she'll make of Naruto's teaching methods, Harry said. Nothing good, Hermione predicted. His entire approach contradicts the Ministry's position that we don't need practical defense training. Well, I think he's brilliant, Ron declared. Best defense lesson we've ever had, even if I did get hit in the face with those rubber balls. As if sensing their discussion, Naruto looked up and caught Harry's eye. The professor gave a small nod and a grin before returning to his conversation with Hagrid. Saturday morning, Harry said, a new determination in his voice. That's when I start training with him. I hope you know what you're getting into, mate, Ron said, eyeing the enthusiastic way Naruto was now demonstrating some kind of combat move to an impressed-looking Hagrid. He seems a bit intense. Harry thought about the strange eyes he'd seen in the forest clearing, and the powerful presence Naruto exuded even when standing still. I think that's exactly what I need right now, he said quietly. Someone intense enough to prepare me for what's coming. As they left the great hall for their first class, Harry felt Umbridge's gaze following him. The High Inquisitor's smile never wavered, but her eyes were cold and calculating. Two forces had entered Hogwarts this year, Harry realized. One seeking to control through bureaucracy and fear, the other offering power through unconventional means. He knew which one he was choosing. Chapter 2, Natural Energy. The sky was still dark when Harry slipped out of Gryffindor Tower early Saturday morning. The castle corridors lay silent and empty, illuminated only by the occasional torch casting long shadows on stone walls. Harry moved quickly, his footsteps echoing in the stillness, the Marauder's map clutched in one hand to avoid any unwanted encounters. Outside, the pre-dawn air bit through his robes. A fine mist hung over the grounds, shrouding the lake in ghostly white. Harry shivered, pulling his cloak tighter around him as he made his way down the sloping lawn. A figure waited at the water's edge. Naruto sat cross-legged on a flat rock, perfectly still, his back to the castle. He wore simpler clothes than usual, black pants and a fitted orange top with his leaf headband still firmly in place. The red sage cloak was nowhere to be seen. Harry approached cautiously, not wanting to disturb whatever meditation the professor might be performing. He needn't have worried. Right on time, Naruto said without turning. I appreciate punctuality. How did you, Harry began. Sense you coming? Naruto finished, finally turning to face him with a grin. That's lesson 1. He patted the rock beside him. Sit. We'll start with the fundamentals. Harry climbed onto the rock, mirroring Naruto's cross-legged position. Close your eyes, Naruto instructed. Take 3 deep breaths. Harry obeyed, inhaling the cool morning air. In my world, Naruto began, his voice taking on a teacher's cadence, we recognize 3 types of energy. Physical energy from the body, spiritual energy from the mind and experience, and natural energy from the world around us. The first 2 combine to form chakra. Add natural energy to that mix in perfect balance, and you enter sage mode. But I don't have chakra, Harry pointed out, opening one eye. Eyes closed, Naruto reminded him. And you're right, you have magic instead. But magic and chakra are cousins, different expressions of the same fundamental force. Both allow humans to reshape reality. Harry closed his eye again, trying to focus. Your wand channels magic from your core, Naruto continued. It's an extension of yourself. But what if you could expand your magical core by drawing power directly from nature? That's what we'll attempt. How? First, awareness. Naruto's voice softened. Without opening your eyes, tell me what you sense around us. Harry concentrated. I hear, the lake water lapping at the shore. Wind in the trees behind us. Something moving in the water, the giant squid maybe. Good. What else? It's cold. The rock beneath us is damp. I can smell, pine from the forest, and something earthy. Keep going deeper. Push your awareness outward. Harry strained his senses, trying to detect more. I don't know what else there is. That's because you're limited to your physical senses, Naruto explained patiently. Natural energy exists beyond them. Sensing it requires a different approach. Harry heard Naruto shift position slightly. I'm going to enter sage mode now, the professor said. When I do, I want you to place your hand on my shoulder. You might feel something unusual, that's intentional. Curiosity piqued, Harry nodded, eyes still closed. A moment of silence passed, then he felt a subtle shift in the air around him, like a change in atmospheric pressure before a storm. Now, Naruto said, his voice somehow deeper, more resonant. Harry reached out and placed his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Immediately, a strange sensation flowed up his arm, a tingling warmth that spread through his body like liquid light. His closed eyelids flickered as patterns of energy seemed to dance behind them. What you're feeling is natural energy flowing through me, Naruto explained. I'm channeling a small portion into you so you can recognize it. The sensation intensified. Harry gasped as his awareness suddenly expanded. He could feel the castle behind them, a massive concentration of something. Magic? Energy? The forbidden forest pulsed with countless points of life. The lake before them swirled with ancient power. Most surprisingly, he could sense the magic within himself, a bright core that seemed to reach eagerly toward the new energy he was experiencing. I can feel everything, Harry whispered. That's just an echo of what's possible, Naruto said. Remove your hand. When Harry broke contact, the expanded awareness vanished immediately, leaving him feeling strangely hollow. That was incredible, he said, opening his eyes to find Naruto watching him closely, those strange toad-like eyes studying his reaction. Can I learn to do that without touching you? Eventually. But it's dangerous. Naruto's sage eyes reverted to their normal blue. Natural energy is powerful but volatile. Absorb too much without proper control, and it can turn you to stone. Harry blinked. Stone. Literally. Literally. I've seen it happen. Naruto's expression grew serious. That's why we'll proceed carefully. You'll start by learning to meditate properly, stilling your body while keeping your mind alert. Like a clemency. Similar, but with an opposite goal. Instead of closing your mind, you're opening it to the energy around you. For the next hour, Naruto guided Harry through basic meditation techniques. The sun rose over the distant mountains, burning away the morning mist as Harry struggled to find the balance between physical stillness and mental alertness. "You're trying too hard," Naruto observed after Harry's fifth failed attempt. "Your magic is fighting against the process. It's used to being channeled through your wand, not absorbed from your surroundings." Harry sighed in frustration. "Maybe wizards just can't do this." "Or maybe," Naruto countered, "you need to approach it differently." He thought for a moment. "Tell me, when do you feel most connected to your magic? When does it flow most naturally?" Harry considered the question. "When I cast my Patronus," he answered finally. "It's the most powerful spell I know, and when it works, it feels right. Like everything aligns." "Interesting. The Patronus charm is pure positive energy, isn't it? A manifestation of joy and protection." Harry nodded. "Try this," Naruto suggested. "Get into meditation position, but instead of emptying your mind, focus on the feeling you have when casting your Patronus. Hold that emotion, that connection, and then gradually expand your awareness outward." Harry closed his eyes again, conjuring the sensation of casting his Patronus. He thought of his happiest memories, flying on his firebolt, his friends, the moments when he felt truly at home at Hogwarts. The warm glow of those feelings filled him, and as it did, he tried to push that awareness outward as Naruto had instructed. For a brief moment, something connected. Harry felt a flicker of that expanded awareness he'd experienced when touching Naruto in Sage mode, a whisper of the world's energy brushing against his consciousness. Then it was gone, slipping away like water through his fingers. "I felt something," he said, opening his eyes. "Just for a second." Naruto's face lit up with a broad smile. "That's excellent for a first attempt. Most people take weeks to sense anything at all." "It didn't last, though. It will come with practice." Naruto stood, stretching his arms above his head. "That's enough for today. Your magical core needs time to adjust to this new approach." As they walked back toward the castle, the grounds coming alive with early morning light, Naruto added, "Practice the meditation daily. Just 15 minutes. Focus on that feeling you discovered, the connection through positive emotion." "Professor," Harry said hesitantly, "what exactly will this do for me if I master it? Will I be able to make shadow clones like you?" Naruto chuckled. "No, that's a specific ninja technique. But a wizard in something like Sage mode might be able to cast spells without a wand, sense magical threats before they appear, and strengthen their existing spells beyond normal limits." "That would be useful against Voldemort," Harry said quietly. Naruto's expression grew somber. "From what I understand about this Dark Lord of yours, he split his soul to achieve a twisted form of immortality. That kind of separation from natural harmony makes him vulnerable to someone who can harness the balanced energy of nature." They reached the castle entrance just as other early risers were heading to breakfast. "Same time next Saturday," Naruto said. "And remember, 15 minutes of meditation daily. Don't push too hard on your own." As Harry turned to leave, Naruto added, "Oh, and Harry, don't tell anyone exactly what we're doing. If asked, just say we're working on advanced defensive techniques. Not even Ron and Hermione. You can tell them you're learning meditation techniques to strengthen your magic. But the specifics of natural energy work, it's better kept between us for now. The fewer people who know, the less likely it'll reach unfriendly ears." Harry nodded, understanding the caution. As he headed for the Great Hall, he felt a new sense of purpose. The brief connection he'd made to natural energy had awakened something inside him, a possibility he'd never considered before. If he could master this, perhaps he wouldn't be so helpless the next time he faced Voldemort. "Professor Uzumaki," Dolores Umbridge's falsely sweet voice rang out across the defense classroom, "I believe my note specified that I would be inspecting your lesson today." Naruto, who was demonstrating a blocking technique with Dean Thomas, looked up with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Of course, High Inquisitor. We've been expecting you. The fifth-year Gryffindors and Slytherins, paired off in the center of the classroom, paused their practice to watch the exchange. I notice, Umbridge continued, clipboard in hand, that your students are engaging in physical combat rather than proper magical defense. They're learning to combine physical evasion with magical shielding, Naruto explained calmly. A wizard who can dodge is less likely to need a shield charm, saving magical energy for counterattacks. I see. Umbridge's pen scratched across her clipboard. And where exactly in the ministry-approved curriculum does dodging appear as an essential skill? A few students snickered. Naruto's smile remained firmly in place. I believe the curriculum calls for teaching students to defend themselves against dark forces. Since dark wizards have been known to use physical attacks alongside magical ones, comprehensive defense includes physical awareness. Umbridge circled the classroom, her heels clicking on the stone floor. Mr. Malfoy, she said, stopping beside Draco, do you find these physical exercises beneficial to your magical education? Draco smirked, clearly relishing the opportunity. Not particularly, Professor Umbridge. I fail to see how Muggle fighting techniques will help us pass our OWL examinations. Interesting point, Mr. Malfoy, Naruto interjected before Umbridge could respond. Perhaps a demonstration would clarify the value. He gestured to the center of the room. Would you care to assist me? Draco's smirk faltered slightly, but with Umbridge and his fellow Slytherins watching, he had little choice. Of course, Professor. Excellent. Naruto moved to the cleared space in the middle of the classroom. Mr. Malfoy, I'd like you to attempt to disarm me using any spell you choose. Draco looked uncertain. Any spell? Within reason, Naruto clarified. Nothing that would cause permanent damage, please. We are still in a classroom. The students formed a circle around them. Umbridge watched with narrowed eyes, her clipboard poised. Draco drew his wand, confidence returning to his pale features. Ready, Professor. Naruto merely nodded, standing relaxed with his hands at his sides. No wand, no defensive stance, he simply waited. Expelliarmus. Draco shouted, a jet of red light shooting from his wand. Naruto sidestepped the spell with a casual grace that made it look effortless. Again, he encouraged. Draco's eyes narrowed. Impedimenta. Again, Naruto avoided the spell with minimal movement. Stupefy. Draco cast more aggressively, followed rapidly by Incarcerus and Petrificus Totalis. Naruto weaved between the spells, his movements fluid and economical. Not a single spell came close to hitting him. Notice, Naruto addressed the class while still evading Draco's increasingly frustrated barrage, that I haven't needed to cast a single shield charm. Physical evasion conserves magical energy and, he ducked under another spell, keeps your opponent off balance. Draco's face had flushed with anger and embarrassment. Stand still, he demanded. Dark wizards rarely comply with such requests, Naruto replied with a slight grin. Mr. Malfoy, try combining your spells with movement. Don't cast from a fixed position. Whether from frustration or a genuine desire to succeed, Draco took the advice. He began circling, casting from different angles, trying to predict Naruto's movements. Better. Naruto approved, still avoiding everything with apparent ease. Class, observe how Mr. Malfoy is now presenting a more challenging target himself while creating unpredictable attack vectors. Umbridge cleared her throat loudly. While this display of agility is certainly athletic, Professor Uzumaki, I fail to see how it relates to the theoretical principles outlined in Defensive Magical Theory by Wilbert Slinkard. Theory and practice must work together, High Inquisitor, Naruto replied, casually leaning away from a jinx that whizzed past his ear. Mr. Malfoy, would you say you're expending more magical energy or less by moving while casting? Draco, breathing heavily from the exertion, glared at him. More. Indeed. And that's the trade-off. Physical movement requires stamina but can make your spells more effective by creating better angles of attack. Enough of this, Umbridge interrupted. I believe I've seen sufficient, Sir Pensortia. Draco suddenly shouted. A large black snake erupted from the end of his wand, landing on the floor between him and Naruto. Several students gasped and backed away. The snake, disoriented and aggressive, raised its head and hissed threateningly. Harry tensed, remembering all too well the last time that spell had been cast in front of him during the dueling club in second year. Naruto, however, didn't seem concerned. He crouched down, meeting the snake at eye level, and made a series of hand signs in rapid succession. What's he doing? Hermione whispered to Harry. Before Harry could respond, Naruto placed his palm on the floor. A small puff of smoke appeared, and when it cleared, a toad the size of a large dog sat before the snake, its warty orange skin glistening in the classroom light. Gamakichi, Naruto addressed the toad, would you mind dealing with our slithery friend? To the astonishment of everyone in the room, the toad replied in a gruff voice, seriously, Naruto? You summon me for a regular snake? Talk about overkill. The toad's long tongue shot out faster than the eye could follow, wrapping around the snake and pulling it into its mouth in one swift gulp. Satisfied, the toad asked, before disappearing in another puff of smoke. The classroom remained silent for several seconds. Draco stared at the spot where the toad had been, his wand hand trembling slightly. What, Umbridge finally managed, her voice higher than usual, was that creature? A toad summoned from Mount Myaboku, Naruto explained casually, as if conjuring talking amphibians was perfectly normal. Where I come from, we form contracts with animal species who assist us in battle. That thing spoke. Pansy Parkinson exclaimed. Of course he spoke, Naruto replied. Gamakichi is highly intelligent. He's also rather sensitive about being summoned for trivial matters, so I owe him some snacks next time. Umbridge's face had turned an interesting shade of pink that clashed horribly with her cardigan. Professor Uzumaki, the use of unknown magical creatures in a classroom setting is strictly regulated by educational decree. Gamakichi isn't a magical creature by your definition, Naruto interrupted politely. He's a summon, a temporary manifestation from another realm. And, he added with a smile, his appearance effectively demonstrated another defensive technique, countering an unexpected threat with an appropriate response. He turned to Draco, who still seemed stunned by what had happened. Excellent improvisation with the snake, Mr. Malfoy. 5 points to Slytherin for creative problem solving. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. Naruto addressed the students. For next lesson, read the section on reflecting curses and prepare to practice the technique. And remember, daily reflex exercises. As the students gathered their belongings, many still whispering excitedly about the giant talking toad, Umbridge approached Naruto with a tight smile. I'll need to see your teaching certification and the permits for summoning non-native magical entities, Professor Uzumaki. On my desk by tomorrow morning. I've already provided Headmaster Dumbledore with all my documentation, Naruto replied pleasantly. I'm sure he'd be happy to share copies with you. See that he does. Umbridge turned to leave, then added, oh, and Professor. The educational decrees apply to all staff, regardless of their cultural backgrounds. After she left, Harry approached Naruto's desk where the professor was jotting down notes. That was brilliant, Harry said quietly. The toad summon. Naruto glanced up with a conspiratorial wink. Sometimes the best defense is surprise. How's the meditation coming? I've been practicing every night, Harry admitted. I've felt something a few times. Like a tingling when I reach out with my awareness. Good. That's progress. Naruto lowered his voice. The toad you saw, Gamakichi, he's from Mount Myaboku, where I learned sage techniques. The toads are natural masters of gathering natural energy. Could they teach me too? Harry asked eagerly. Naruto chuckled. The toad contract is specific to my world. But there might be equivalent creatures here with natural connections to earth energy. He seemed to consider something. Actually, that gives me an idea for our next session. Now get going before you're late for your next class. As Harry left, he couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Despite Umbridge's interference, despite the Daily Prophet's continued campaign against him, despite the lingering nightmares, for the first time in months, he felt like he was moving forward instead of simply reacting to events around him. The room of requirement materialized exactly as Hermione had described, spacious, equipped with cushions for practicing, bookshelves lined with defensive magic texts, and strange instruments that Harry suspected might help detect dark wizards. This is perfect, he said, surveying the room. It becomes whatever you need it to be, Hermione explained to the gathered students, about 25 in total, from various houses, though noticeably absent were any Slytherins. The first meeting of what they were tentatively calling Dumbledore's army had drawn more interest than Harry had expected. Word had spread through trusted friends that Harry would be teaching real defensive magic, countering Umbridge's theory-only approach. So, Harry began awkwardly, facing the expectant faces. Like we said, the idea is to practice defense, because Voldemort's back. Several students flinched at the name. Zacharias Smith, a Hufflepuff with a perpetually skeptical expression, crossed his arms. So you say, he challenged. Where's the proof? If you've come to hear exactly what it looks like when Voldemort murders someone, I can't help you, Harry replied coldly. If you're here to learn defense, we can begin. If not, the door's there. No one moved. After a tense moment, Hermione cleared her throat. I think we should elect a leader, she suggested. Harry's leader, Cho Chang said immediately, causing Harry's stomach to perform a small somersault. Yes, but we should make it formal, Hermione insisted. All in favor? Everyone raised their hands except Zacharias Smith, who eventually gave a half-hearted wave after Katie Bell glared at him. Right, Harry said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. I thought we'd start with Expelliarmus, the disarming charm. Basic but useful. Please, Zacharias scoffed. If we're fighting you-know-who, disarming won't exactly help. I used it against him in June, Harry said quietly. It saved my life. The room went very still. But if you think it's beneath you, feel free to leave. Again, no one moved. Harry paired them up and had them practice the spell. As he walked between the pairs, correcting grip and pronunciation, he couldn't help thinking about his sessions with Naruto. The professor's emphasis on practical application over theory aligned perfectly with what Harry was trying to do here. You know, Luna Lovegood said dreamily as Harry helped her with her wand work, Professor Naruto would approve of this group. He told our class that communities who train together survive together. Did he? Harry asked, interested. Luna nodded. He said in his village, they formed teams of 3 students with 1 teacher, and they learned to combine their strengths. He called it the will of fire. Harry considered this. That's not a bad idea, actually. Maybe once everyone masters the basics, we could work on combination attacks. The meeting continued for an hour, and despite some initial skepticism, most students showed marked improvement in their disarming charms. As they prepared to leave, staggered departures to avoid suspicion, Hermione passed around a piece of parchment. Everyone needs to sign, she said. Just a commitment that you won't tell Umbridge or anyone else what we're doing. After some hesitation, each student signed. When the last person had left, only Harry, Ron, and Hermione remained. That went well, Hermione said, carefully folding the signed parchment. Yeah, Harry agreed, surprising himself with his enthusiasm. Next time, I thought we might try stunning spells. You're a good teacher, Harry, Hermione observed. They all improved. Harry shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I just showed them what I know. That's what teaching is, Ron pointed out. Anyway, how's the special training with Naruto going? Any cool ninja magic yet? It's not ninja magic, Harry corrected automatically. It's more like meditation to enhance magical awareness. He hadn't told them everything, honoring Naruto's request for discretion, but he'd shared the basics of his Saturday sessions. Have you made progress? Hermione asked, her academic curiosity evident. Harry hesitated. A little. I can sense something now. It's hard to describe. Like feeling the magic around you rather than just inside you. Sounds dead useful, Ron said. Wish he'd teach all of us. He said it's not for everyone, Harry replied carefully. Different magical affinities or something. As they made their way back to Gryffindor Tower under the invisibility cloak, Harry wondered if he should tell Naruto about the DA. The professor would likely approve, given his emphasis on practical training, but Harry was reluctant to put Naruto in a difficult position with Umbridge already targeting him. For now, he decided, he would keep both his worlds separate, the DA under his leadership, and natural energy training under Naruto's. Each had its place in preparing him for whatever lay ahead. October slipped into November, bringing biting winds and the first dusting of snow to the Hogwarts grounds. Harry continued his Saturday sessions with Naruto, making slow but steady progress with natural energy sensing. The DA meetings, held irregularly to avoid detection, had become the highlight of many students' weeks, a place where they could learn real defense and feel like they were actively resisting the ministry's interference. On a particularly cold Saturday morning, Naruto led Harry deeper into the forbidden forest than they'd ventured before. Where are we going? Harry asked, following the professor along a narrow path that didn't appear on the Marauder's map. To meet someone who might help with your training, Naruto replied. I've been exploring the forest during my patrols and found a community that understands natural energy in ways similar to the toads of Mount Myaboku. They walked for nearly an hour, the forest growing denser and older around them. The trees here were massive, their trunks wider than Hagrid, their canopies blocking most of the winter sunlight. The snow had not penetrated this deep, but the ground was covered in a thick carpet of moss that seemed to glow with a faint inner light. This part of the forest is ancient, Naruto explained, his voice hushed with respect. The natural energy here is exceptionally pure. Can you feel it? Harry closed his eyes briefly as they walked, extending his senses as he'd been practicing. To his surprise, he could indeed feel something, a gentle pressure against his consciousness, like standing in a slow-moving stream. Yes, he breathed. It's stronger here. Naruto nodded approvingly. Your sensitivity is improving. They emerged into a small clearing dominated by a single massive oak tree. Its trunk was easily 20 feet in diameter, and its branches spread outward like a cathedral ceiling. At its base, nestled between enormous roots, was what appeared to be an entrance to a burrow or den. Naruto approached and knelt respectfully before the opening. Elder Magi, he called softly. I've brought the young wizard I spoke of. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the moss around the entrance rippled, and a creature emerged that made Harry blink in surprise. It resembled a badger, but was the size of a small bear, with silver-streaked black fur and eyes that glowed with an amber light. Most remarkably, its body seemed partially composed of living plants, moss grew along its spine, small flowers bloomed on its shoulders, and its claws were like curved roots. Uzumaki, the creature acknowledged in a deep, rumbling voice. And the wizard child. It turned those glowing eyes on Harry. I sense the potential in him, as you claimed. Harry, this is Elder Magi of the Earth Set, Naruto introduced. The Earth Set badgers are this forest's equivalent to the sage toads I trained with. They've dwelled here since before Hogwarts was built, drawing on the forest's natural energy. Harry, unsure of the proper protocol, gave an awkward bow. It's an honor to meet you, Elder Magi. The badger made a sound that might have been amusement. Polite, at least. Better than most wizards who stumble upon our home. He turned to Naruto. You believe he can learn to harness earth energy without the traditional contracts. His magical core has an unusual resonance with natural energy, Naruto explained. And he's made progress faster than I expected. Maji studied Harry with those unsettling amber eyes. Show me what you've learned, young wizard. Under Naruto's encouraging nod, Harry sat cross-legged on the moss, closed his eyes, and began the meditation techniques he'd been practicing. He focused first on his magical core, visualizing it as Naruto had taught him, a sphere of light within his chest. Then, gradually, he extended his awareness outward, seeking the currents of natural energy that surrounded him. In this ancient part of the forest, the sensation was far stronger than anything he'd experienced before. The energy felt almost tangible, like cool water flowing around him. Cautiously, Harry attempted the technique Naruto had introduced in their most recent session, creating a connection between his magical core and the external energy. A tingling warmth spread through his body, starting at his core and flowing outward to his limbs. His awareness expanded dramatically, and he could suddenly sense everything around him: Naruto's steady presence, Elder Maji's ancient, rooted energy, the teeming life of the forest, and even, distantly, the magical hum of Hogwarts Castle. Remarkable, Elder Maji's voice penetrated Harry's meditation. He draws it naturally, without the sage contract. Keep it balanced, Harry, Naruto instructed. Don't pull too much. Harry tried to maintain the delicate equilibrium between his own magic and the natural energy flowing into him. For nearly a minute, he held it stable, before the connection suddenly collapsed, leaving him gasping. That's the furthest I've gotten, he said, opening his eyes. To his surprise, both Naruto and Elder Maji were watching him with expressions of approval. The boy has affinity, Maji acknowledged. But his technique is unrefined. The balance is precarious. That's why we're here, Naruto said. Your clan understands earth energy better than anyone in this forest. Could you help guide him? The great badger considered for a moment, then nodded his massive head. We have avoided wizards for centuries, but times are changing. We sense the darkness growing beyond our borders. He fixed Harry with those glowing eyes again. I will teach you our way of communion with earth energy, young wizard. It differs from the Toad Sage's method but may suit your magical nature better. For the next 2 hours, Elder Maji guided Harry through a different approach to natural energy gathering. Instead of actively drawing energy in, the badger taught him to become receptive, to empty himself and allow the energy to flow through him naturally. Your wizarding magic reaches out, grasps, controls, Maji explained in his rumbling voice. Earth energy must be invited, welcomed, channeled. It cannot be commanded. By the end of the session, Harry had managed to maintain the connection for nearly 5 minutes, a significant improvement. More importantly, he'd begun to understand the fundamental difference in approach that Maji described. The energy feels different this way, he told Naruto as they prepared to leave. Less like something I'm using and more like something I'm part of. That's exactly right, Naruto said, clearly pleased. The toads taught me to balance natural energy with my chakra. What Elder Maji is teaching you is how to let your magic harmonize with natural energy. You may return next week, Maji told Harry. But remember, speak of us to no one. Our existence remains our greatest protection. I promise, Harry said solemnly. As they made their way back through the forest, Harry felt a new sense of possibility. The connection he'd experienced had been stronger than anything in his previous sessions with Naruto, and Elder Maji's approach seemed to work better with his magical nature. Professor, he ventured, when I connected to the natural energy back there, I could sense things far away, even the castle. Would this help me, sense Voldemort? Know what he's planning? Naruto's expression grew thoughtful. Possibly. Natural energy connects all living things. With enough practice, you might be able to sense disturbances or concentrations of dark energy. He glanced at Harry. But there's more to it than just sensing. When you truly harmonize with natural energy, your magic itself will change, become more powerful, more instinctive. Like your sage mode. A wizarding equivalent, yes. Your spells would draw power not just from your magical core but from the world around you. They walked in silence for a while, the implications of that possibility settling between them. Dumbledore thinks Voldemort will try to get to me again, Harry said finally, voicing the fear that had haunted him since June. He's already gotten into my head once, through dreams. Naruto nodded grimly. Headmaster Dumbledore mentioned your connection. That's another reason natural energy training might help. A mind balanced with nature is harder to penetrate or influence. As they neared the edge of the forest, Naruto stopped suddenly, his posture alerting Harry to potential danger. What is it? Harry whispered. We're being watched, Naruto replied quietly. Have been for the last 10 minutes. Harry instinctively reached for his wand, but Naruto placed a restraining hand on his arm. No. Let them think we haven't noticed. Whoever it is, they're skilled at concealment, using some kind of technique I haven't encountered before. They continued walking, now with an air of casual conversation, though Harry's nerves were on edge. When they reached the forest's edge, Naruto suddenly made a complex hand sign and whispered, Shadow Clone Jutsu. A copy of Naruto appeared beside them. Without a word, the clone slipped back into the forest, moving silently between the trees. What's it doing? Harry asked under his breath. Investigating our observer, Naruto replied. My clone will circle around and approach from behind. Go back to the castle normally, I'll join you shortly. Reluctantly, Harry continued across the grounds alone, fighting the urge to look back toward the forest. He had nearly reached the castle steps when Naruto appeared beside him, his expression troubled. Did your clone find something? Harry asked. Someone, Naruto corrected. But they dispelled my clone with a technique I've never seen, some kind of hybrid of magic and chakra. His blue eyes narrowed. Whoever it was, they're not from my world or yours. There's something in between. What does that mean? It means we're not the only ones exploring the boundaries between our worlds. Naruto's voice had lost its usual cheerfulness. Someone else is very interested in what we're doing, Harry. And I doubt their intentions are friendly. The next morning, the Great Hall buzzed with unusual excitement. Students clustered around copies of the Daily Prophet, voices raised in alarm and speculation. Harry, Ron, and Hermione hurried to their seats at the Gryffindor table, where Neville wordlessly passed them the newspaper. Attack on Hogsmeade Village, unknown magic terrorizes residents. Harry read quickly, his stomach clenching as he absorbed the details. During the night, Hogsmeade had been attacked by unknown assailants using what witnesses described as impossible magical techniques. 3 shops had been destroyed, including Dervish and Banjas, and several residents had been injured. Most disturbingly, survivors reported that the attackers had performed magic without wands, creating effects that resembled both spells and something else entirely. Listen to this, Hermione said, pointing to a particular paragraph. Witness Madame Rosmerta described one attacker summoning what appeared to be a wall of earth to block aura spells, before causing the ground to split open beneath them. It wasn't any transfiguration I've ever seen, she stated. The earth moved like it was alive, and the wizard controlled it with hand movements, not a wand. Sounds like what Naruto does, Ron whispered. The hand signs and everything. Harry frowned. But Naruto was at the castle all night. I saw him at dinner, and the map showed him in his quarters afterward. I'm not suggesting it was him, Hermione clarified quickly. But it sounds like someone using techniques from his world. Harry remembered what Naruto had said the previous day about their unseen observer in the forest. Someone in between, he murmured. What? Ron asked. Before Harry could explain, the Great Hall's doors burst open. Minister for Magic Cornelius Fudge strode in, flanked by 2 Aurors and a beaming Dolores Umbridge. They marched directly to the staff table, where Dumbledore had risen to his feet, his expression grave but composed. Dumbledore, Fudge announced loudly enough for the entire hall to hear, in light of last night's attack and evidence of foreign magical techniques being employed against British wizards, I am here to question your so-called exchange professor about his involvement. All eyes turned to Naruto, who sat calmly at the staff table, his breakfast half finished. Minister, Dumbledore replied with perfect politeness, Professor Uzumaki was present in the castle all night. Numerous staff members can attest to this. Nevertheless, Fudge blustered, he is the only known practitioner of these foreign techniques in Britain. At minimum, he may have knowledge about who could have perpetrated this attack. Naruto stood, his expression serious but unworried. I'm happy to answer any questions, Minister Fudge. I'm as concerned about this attack as you are. We'll conduct this interview in a more private setting, Umbridge simpered. Perhaps my office? I believe my office would be more appropriate, Dumbledore countered smoothly. As headmaster, I should be present for any questioning of my staff. Fudge looked like he wanted to object but seemed to think better of it. Very well. Immediately, if you please. As the group left the Great Hall, whispers erupted among the students. Harry exchanged worried glances with Ron and Hermione. This is bad, Hermione said quietly. The Ministry's been looking for an excuse to interfere further at Hogwarts. Now they have one. But Naruto wasn't involved, Harry insisted. He was here. Doesn't matter, mate, Ron replied grimly. Fudge is desperate to blame someone other than you-know-who for all the bad things happening. Naruto's foreign, uses weird magic they don't understand, and arrived right before trouble started. He's a perfect scapegoat. Harry couldn't argue with that logic, but he felt a surge of protectiveness toward the professor who had been helping him. We have to do something. Like what? Hermione asked practically. We can't exactly burst into Dumbledore's office. No, Harry agreed, but we can warn Naruto about what we've learned, about how the attack used techniques that sound like they're from his world. Throughout the day, tension hung over the castle. Rumors spread that Naruto had been arrested, that he'd been sent back to his own world, that he'd escaped Ministry custody. By dinner, there was still no sign of either Naruto or Dumbledore at the staff table. This isn't good, Hermione whispered. What if the Great Hall doors opened, and Naruto walked in, followed by Dumbledore? Both appeared perfectly calm, though Harry thought he detected a tightness around Naruto's eyes that hadn't been there before. Umbridge, already seated, watched them with undisguised disappointment. Clearly, the interrogation hadn't yielded the results the Ministry had hoped for. After dinner, Harry managed to catch Naruto in the corridor. Professor, he said quickly, is everything all right? What happened with the Ministry? Naruto glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. 8 hours of questioning about my background, my techniques, and my whereabouts last night. Fortunately, the castle itself provided my alibi, the portraits and ghosts confirmed my movements. The prophet said the attackers used techniques like yours, controlling Earth without wands. Yes, that's what concerns me. Naruto's voice dropped lower. It confirms what I suspected yesterday in the forest. Someone is combining chakra techniques from my world with magic from yours. How is that possible? I don't know. In theory, the dimensional barriers should prevent such crossover. Naruto looked troubled. Dumbledore and I believe this may be related to why I was brought here in the first place. What do you mean? The Dimensional Exchange Initiative wasn't just about educational cooperation. There have been anomalies. Thinning between worlds. Naruto hesitated. I shouldn't say more here. Continue your training as planned. Be vigilant, Harry. With that cryptic warning, Naruto continued down the corridor, leaving Harry with more questions than answers. The next DA meeting had an air of urgency that previous sessions had lacked. News of the Hogsmeade attack had galvanized the members, making the threat they were preparing for feel immediate and real. Today we'll work on something more advanced, Harry announced to the assembled students. The stunning spell. It's one of the most useful combat spells, knocks your opponent unconscious without causing permanent damage. He demonstrated the wand movement and incantation, stupefy, sending a jet of red light into a cushion that had been propped against the wall. We'll need to pair up and take turns, he continued. One person stuns, the other falls onto these cushions. Then switch. Remember, aim carefully, stunning someone who isn't prepared and doesn't have a soft landing can cause injuries. The room of requirement filled with shouts of stupefy, as pairs of students practiced. Harry moved between them, correcting technique and offering encouragement. He noticed that the members who had been most diligent about the physical awareness exercises he'd incorporated, inspired by Naruto's classes, were having greater success with their aim. Neville, paired with Ron, was struggling. His stunning spell repeatedly missed or fizzled out before reaching its target. After his fifth failed attempt, his frustration was evident. "I can't do it," he muttered. "I'm useless at this." Harry approached him. "You're overthinking it, Neville. Remember what Professor Naruto taught us about intention and focus? In defense class the previous week, Naruto had explained that spells, like chakra techniques, worked best when the caster's intention was clear and focused. Try this, Harry suggested. Instead of concentrating on the wand movement and word being perfect, focus on what you want to happen. Visualize Ron being stunned, feel the energy of the spell, then let it flow through your wand. Neville looked doubtful but closed his eyes briefly, seeming to center himself. When he opened them, his expression had changed, more determined, more present. "Stupefy," he called, and this time a solid jet of red light shot from his wand, hitting Ron squarely in the chest. Ron went rigid and toppled backward onto the cushions. "I did it!" Neville exclaimed, looking as shocked as everyone else. "Brilliant, Neville," Harry said, genuinely impressed. He revived Ron with a quick renervate. "Blimey, Neville," Ron said, sitting up groggily. That packed a punch. By the end of the session, most members had mastered the basic stunning spell. As they prepared to leave, Harry felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Cho Chang smiling shyly at him. "You're a really good teacher, Harry," she said. "I've learned more from you than I have from any defense professor." "Well, except maybe Professor Naruto," she amended with a small laugh. "Thanks," Harry replied, feeling his face grow warm. "It's easier to teach stuff you've had to use in real situations." "Is it true what they're saying?" Cho asked, lowering her voice. "That the Hogsmeade attackers used magic like Professor Naruto's?" "I don't know," Harry answered carefully, remembering Naruto's warning about discretion. "The prophet isn't always reliable." "No, I suppose not." Cho hesitated, then added, "I just worry, with everything that's happening. Are we really going to be ready? If there's another war?" The vulnerability in her question caught Harry off guard. For a moment, he saw past his crush on Cho to the person beneath, someone who, like him, had been marked by Cedric's death and was facing an uncertain future with fear. "I don't know if anyone's ever really ready," he said honestly. "But we're doing something, at least. That's better than pretending everything's fine when it isn't." She nodded, seeming to find comfort in his words. "See you next time, Harry." After everyone had left, Harry, Ron, and Hermione remained behind to tidy up. "You were really good with Neville," Hermione observed. "That visualization technique, is that something Professor Naruto taught you in your private sessions?" "Sort of," Harry said. "It's similar to how he explains chakra control, but applied to magic." He hesitated, then decided to share something he'd been thinking about. "Actually, I've been wondering if we should incorporate more of his methods into the DA. Not the advanced stuff, but the basic awareness and focusing techniques." "Couldn't hurt," Ron agreed. "His classes are the only ones where I actually feel like I'm learning to defend myself properly." Hermione looked thoughtful. "The integration of physical and magical defense does make logical sense. Most wizards rely too heavily on spells and forget that sometimes ducking is faster than casting shield charm. Harry nodded, remembering Naruto's demonstration with Draco. Exactly. And if these Hogsmeade attackers are using combined techniques, we need to be prepared for the unexpected. As they made their way back to Gryffindor Tower, Harry's thoughts returned to his training with Elder Magi. The ancient badger had taught him that magic could be more than a tool, it could be a connection, a harmony with the energy that flowed through all living things. If he could master that approach, perhaps he could teach it to the DA as well. But first, he needed to achieve it himself. The week leading up to the Christmas holidays brought heavy snowfall to Hogwarts. The castle grounds transformed into a winter wonderland, with students engaging in epic snowball fights during breaks between classes. Even the tension caused by Umbridge's increasingly restrictive educational decrees couldn't entirely dampen the pre-holiday spirit. Harry's Saturday morning session with Naruto and Elder Magi had been particularly productive. For the first time, Harry had managed to maintain his connection to natural energy for over 10 minutes, achieving a partial transformation that both of his teachers had found encouraging. "Your eyes changed," Naruto had told him with evident pride. Just for a moment, but they took on the sage markings, green instead of yellow, but definitely sage characteristics. "The wizard adapts well to earth communion," Elder Magi had rumbled approvingly. "His magic flows with the forest's rhythm now, not against it." Harry had felt the difference himself, a deepening awareness, a sense of being both larger than his physical body and more grounded within it. His magic had felt different too, less like a tool he wielded and more like an extension of himself, connected to everything around him. The breakthrough left him in high spirits as he made his way to the final DA meeting before the holidays. The room of requirement had decorated itself festively, with garlands of holly and enchanted icicles hanging from the ceiling. Harry had planned a review session of everything they'd covered so far, followed by a bit of a celebration. The meeting was going well, with members successfully demonstrating disarming charms, stunning spells, impediment jinxes, and the reductor curse, when a house elf suddenly appeared in the room with a crack, causing several students to jump in alarm. "Dobby!" Harry exclaimed, recognizing the elf with his tea-cozy hat and mismatched socks. "What are you, Harry Potter, sir?" Dobby squeaked, his tennis ball eyes wide with terror. "Dobby has come to warn you, she is coming. She knows." Harry's blood ran cold. "Umbridge? She's coming here. Now." Dobby nodded frantically, pulling at his ears in distress. "The High Inquisitor discovered your meeting place, Harry Potter. A student told her. What are you waiting for?" Harry bellowed at the frozen students. "Run!" Chaos erupted as everyone rushed for the exit. Harry grabbed the list of names, Hermione's enchanted parchment with all their signatures, and shoved it deep into his robes. "Harry, come on!" Hermione urged, pulling at his arm. They sprinted into the corridor, where students were already scattering in all directions. "Go to the library," Harry hissed to those nearest him. "Pretend you've been there all along." He, Ron, and Hermione ran toward Gryffindor Tower, taking a shortcut behind a tapestry. They had almost reached the portrait hole when a spell hit Harry from behind, sending him crashing to the floor. "Trip Jinx, Potter," came Draco Malfoy's triumphant voice. "The High Inquisitor will be pleased, I've caught the ringleader." Ron lunged toward Malfoy, but Hermione held him back. "Don't. You'll only make it worse." Before Harry could get to his feet, Umbridge arrived, her toad-like face stretched into a smile of malicious delight. "Excellent, Mr. Malfoy," she said breathlessly. 50 points to Slytherin. "Now, Potter, you'll come with me to the headmaster's office immediately." Harry was marched through the castle, Umbridge's stubby fingers gripping his shoulder painfully. His mind raced, trying to figure out who had betrayed them. They had all signed the parchment, which Hermione had enchanted to identify any traitor, yet someone had still talked. In Dumbledore's office, a bizarre tableau awaited him. The headmaster sat calmly behind his desk, while Minister Fudge stood nearby, practically bouncing on his heels with excitement. Percy Weasley hovered at his elbow, quill poised over a notebook. Professor McGonagall stood stiffly by the wall, her expression thunderous. And, to Harry's surprise, Naruto leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed, watching the proceedings with a carefully neutral expression. "Ah, Potter," Fudge said with obvious satisfaction. "We've been waiting for you." Minister Fudge caught me inquiring about the whereabouts of a student group calling themselves Dumbledore's Army, Dumbledore explained calmly. "Most unfortunate timing." Harry blinked in confusion. Dumbledore appeared to be taking responsibility for the DA, despite having nothing to do with its creation. Umbridge thrust a piece of parchment at Fudge. "I found this in the room they were using, Minister. Look at the name they chose." Fudge's eyes widened as he read the heading, Dumbledore's Army. He looked up triumphantly. "This is proof, Dumbledore. Proof that you've been plotting against the Ministry, raising an army of students to overthrow me." "It would appear so," Dumbledore agreed placidly. Harry couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Professor, no. It wasn't his idea, it was mine. Be quiet, Potter," Professor McGonagall hissed. "Most admirable of you to protect your students, Headmaster," Fudge said, not bothering to hide his glee. "But this document makes the situation quite clear. You will now accompany us to the Ministry to await trial for conspiracy and sedition." "Ah, I thought we might reach this point," Dumbledore sighed, rising from his chair. "I'm afraid I won't be accompanying you anywhere, Cornelius." What happened next occurred so quickly that Harry barely registered it. Dumbledore made a sudden movement, a flash of silver light filled the room, and Harry found himself pressed to the floor by a strong hand, Naruto's. When the light faded, Fudge, Umbridge, and Percy were sprawled on the ground, looking dazed. Dumbledore still stood behind his desk, now holding his phoenix fox by the tail. "Professor Naruto, I entrust the school's defense to you in my absence," Dumbledore said urgently. "Remember what we discussed about the forest anomalies." Naruto nodded grimly. "I'll handle it, Headmaster. Minerva, please ensure Harry returns safely to Gryffindor Tower." "What are you going to do, Albus?" McGonagall asked anxiously. "I must go into hiding temporarily," Dumbledore replied. "But I will not be gone forever." He fixed Harry with a penetrating gaze. "Continue your studies, Harry, all of them. They are more important now than ever." With a flash of fire, Dumbledore and Fawkes vanished, leaving the office in stunned silence. Fudge recovered first, scrambling to his feet. "Find him," he bellowed to no one in particular. "Search the grounds. Alert the Daily Prophet." Naruto straightened, his posture suddenly commanding attention. "Minister Fudge," he said evenly, "I believe your immediate concern should be the safety of Hogwarts students given the recent attacks in Hogsmeade. With the headmaster temporarily indisposed, security should be our priority." "Security?" Fudge sputtered. "You dare speak of security when you're likely in league with Dumbledore yourself?" Naruto smiled, but there was steel behind it. "I serve the safety of these students, a goal I'm sure we share, regardless of political differences." Before Fudge could respond, a distant explosion rocked the castle, sending tremors through the floor and causing the portraits to sway on the walls. "What was that?" Umbridge shrieked, having finally regained her senses. Another explosion followed, closer this time. The windows of Dumbledore's office rattled in their frames. Naruto's expression darkened. "It seems our enemies have chosen their moment well." He turned to McGonagall. "Professor, initiate the castle's defensive protocols. Get all students to their dormitories immediately." To Harry's surprise, McGonagall nodded without question, rushing from the office with remarkable speed for her age. Naruto faced Fudge and Umbridge. "Minister, whatever our disagreements, I suggest we postpone them. Hogwarts is under attack." "Attack?" Fudge repeated incredulously. "By whom?" A third explosion answered him, close enough to send dust cascading from the ceiling. Fox's empty perch toppled over. Naruto moved to the window, his body tense with alert readiness. The same group that attacked Hogsmeade, I suspect. Only this time, they've brought reinforcements. Harry joined him at the window, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Figures in dark cloaks were advancing across the snow-covered grounds toward the castle. Some moved in the conventional way, but others traveled with inhuman speed, leaving blurred streaks across the white landscape. Most disturbing of all, at the center of the group stood a tall figure with long, pale hair, conducting what appeared to be a ritual. As they watched, the figure completed a series of complex hand signs, then slammed both palms into the ground. The earth before them erupted, forming into a massive, humanoid shape of rock and soil that towered 20 feet high. Earth-style, golem jutsu, Naruto murmured. Combined with animation charms, by the look of it. What are those things? Harry asked, unable to tear his eyes from the advancing threat. The convergence, Naruto replied grimly. Rogue wizards and missing nin who've found a way to merge our world's powers. He turned to Harry, his blue eyes intense. This is what I've been preparing you for, Harry. Time to put your training to the test. Chapter 3, Two Powers, One Purpose. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the entrance hall as the stone golem smashed its fist through a ground-floor window. Students screamed, scattering in panic as shards rained down on the marble floor. Get back! Naruto shouted, vaulting over the balustrade from the grand staircase. He landed in a crouch between the students and the massive stone arm now reaching through the broken window. Harry raced down the stairs, wand drawn. Behind him, McGonagall was evacuating students while Flitwick and Sprout reinforced the castle's ancient protective enchantments. The situation had escalated from confusion to crisis in minutes as multiple attackers had breached the outer grounds. Naruto's hands flashed through signs faster than Harry could follow. Earth-style, stone pillar prison. The marble floor around the golem's arm liquefied then re-solidified, trapping the stone appendage. The creature roared, a sound like grinding boulders, and began pulling against its restraint. Harry, Naruto called, maintaining his jutsu with visible effort, rally your DA members. Protect the younger students. Get them to the Great Hall, it's the most defensible position. But I can help you fight. Not yet, Naruto interrupted, his face showing the strain. You're not ready for direct combat with these opponents. Trust me on this. Harry hesitated only a moment before nodding. Right. Great Hall. As he turned to go, Naruto added, if you get a chance, try what we've been practicing. Just don't overextend. Heart pounding, Harry sprinted toward Gryffindor Tower. The corridors were chaos, prefects attempting to maintain order while confused students speculated wildly about what was happening. He spotted Ron and Hermione organizing first years. Harry! Hermione called when she saw him. What's going on? We heard explosions, the castle's under attack, Harry explained quickly. The same group that hit Hogsmeade. Naruto called them the Convergence, wizards working with people from his world. Ron paled beneath his freckles. Bloody hell. What do we do? Get everyone to the Great Hall. Round up the DA, we need to help protect the younger students. Hermione's practical nature took over. I'll send messages to all the DA members. She pulled out her enchanted galleon, the coins they'd created to communicate meeting times. With a quick tap of her wand, she modified the spell. There. Everyone's coin will heat up with the message to go to the Great Hall. Brilliant, Harry said. Ron, can you and Neville get the younger Gryffindors moving? On it, Ron confirmed, already gathering nervously milling first years. Harry turned back toward the entrance hall where Naruto was fighting. He needed to see what they were up against. From a position on the landing, Harry watched in awe as Naruto battled multiple attackers simultaneously. The stone golem had freed itself and was now engaged in a brutal grappling match with 3 shadow clones. Meanwhile, Naruto himself faced two figures in dark cloaks, one wielding a wand like a wizard, the other moving with the same fluid combat style as Naruto. "You've interfered enough, Uzumaki," the wandless attacker snarled, forming hand signs that Harry didn't recognize. Snake, ram, monkey, boar, horse, tiger, fire style, fireball jutsu. A massive sphere of flame erupted toward Naruto, who countered with his own jutsu. Water style, water wall. Steam exploded as the techniques collided, filling the entrance hall with blinding mist. Harry squinted, trying to see through the vapor. The fight had taken on a surreal quality, jutsu and magic intermingling in ways he'd never imagined possible. The wizard-like attacker would cast conventional spells, stunning charms and blasting curses, while the ninja-like fighter used elemental techniques similar to Naruto's. Most disturbingly, some attacks seemed to be hybrids, hand signs followed by spell-like effects, or wand movements producing jutsu-like results. A cold voice cut through the chaos. "Enough games. Where is the boy?" The steam cleared enough for Harry to see a tall figure standing in the doorway. Unlike the others, this person wore no cloak, but rather a form-fitting purple-gray outfit with a strange rope belt. Their face was partially obscured by long, pale hair, but Harry could see unnatural, snake-like eyes gleaming in the torchlight. "You won't find him, Orochi," Naruto answered, his voice harder than Harry had ever heard it. "And you're not welcome here." The figure, Orochi, smiled, revealing unnaturally pointed teeth. "Such hostility, Uzumaki. Have you forgotten our history?" He made a subtle gesture, and his followers stepped back. "I merely wish to examine the fascinating connection between our worlds. This castle is a nexus point, rich in possibilities." "You breached the dimensional barrier," Naruto accused. "You're destabilizing both worlds." "I'm evolving them," Orochi corrected, his sibilant voice eerily reminiscent of Voldemort's. "Magic and chakra, separate traditions that should never have been divided. I'm simply reuniting them." McGonagall appeared at the top of the stairs, her wand raised. "You will leave this school immediately," she commanded, every inch the formidable deputy headmistress. Orochi barely spared her a glance. A conventional witch. How quaint. He made a single hand sign, and McGonagall was thrown backward by an invisible force, landing hard against the stone wall. "Professor!" Harry shouted, abandoning his concealment to run to her side. Orochi's strange eyes fixed on him instantly. "Ah, the famous Harry Potter. Your reputation precedes you, even across dimensions." Harry felt a chill run through him at those words. There was something deeply wrong about this person, an aura of malevolence that reminded him uncomfortably of Voldemort. "Harry, get back!" Naruto warned, moving to place himself between Harry and Orochi. "The vessel of the Nine Tails, protecting the boy who lived," Orochi observed with cold amusement. "How fitting. Both of you carrying burdens beyond your years, shaped by powers not your own." Harry helped McGonagall to her feet, relieved to find her stunned but not seriously injured. "Get students to the Great Hall, Potter," she instructed, her voice shaky but determined. Minerva McGonagall does not require assistance to defend her school. She straightened her hat with dignity and strode forward, joining Naruto in confronting the intruders. "Professor Uzumaki," McGonagall said without taking her eyes off Orochi, "I believe a coordinated response is in order." Naruto nodded. "On my mark then." Harry backed away, understanding that his presence was complicating the situation. As he retreated up the stairs, he heard McGonagall and Naruto begin casting in unison, her wand movements synchronized with his hand signs in a breathtaking display of magical cooperation. The entrance hall erupted in light and sound as their combined powers clashed with Orochi and his followers. The Great Hall had been transformed into a makeshift fortress. House tables had been pushed against the walls, and older students stood guard at each entrance. Professor Flitwick had enchanted the ceiling to show the grounds, allowing them to monitor the ongoing battle outside. "They've breached the East Wing," Ginny reported, returning from her reconnaissance. Professor Snape and Professor Vector are holding them off, but there are at least a dozen attackers. What about the entrance hall? Harry asked. Still fighting, Ginny replied grimly. That snake-eyed leader is impossibly strong. Naruto and McGonagall are keeping him contained, but barely. Harry paced anxiously. The DA members had organized themselves admirably, positioning defenders and establishing a perimeter, but they were students facing an unknown enemy with powers beyond conventional wizardry. We need to do more than just defend, Harry said finally. They're looking for something in the castle. If we can figure out what it is. Harry, Hermione interjected, looking up from the ancient tome she'd somehow acquired during the crisis, I think I might know. Look at this. She pointed to an illustration showing Hogwarts castle positioned at the center of several intersecting lines. According to Hogwarts, a history, the castle was built on a convergence point of natural ley lines, channels of magical energy that flow through the earth. Like the natural energy Naruto's been teaching me about, Harry murmured. Exactly. Hermione's eyes lit with academic excitement despite the danger. What if these convergence people are trying to tap into that energy? Combining it with their chakra techniques? But why attack now? Ron questioned. The castle's been here for 1,000 years. Luna Lovegood, who had been listening nearby, offered dreamily, perhaps the dimensional barriers are thinnest at this time. Professor Naruto's arrival might have created a pathway. Harry stared at her. Luna's seemingly random insights often contained grains of profound truth. That's it, he said slowly. Naruto arrived through some kind of dimensional portal. What if that weakened the barrier between our worlds, creating an opportunity for others to cross over? And with Dumbledore gone? Hermione added, connecting the dots. The castle's magical protections would be at their weakest, Harry finished. A tremendous crash from outside interrupted their theorizing. Through Flitwick's enchanted ceiling, they watched as another stone golem joined the first, both pounding relentlessly against the castle's ancient walls. We can't just stay here, Harry decided. I'm going to help Naruto. Harry, that's mad. Ron protested. You heard him, these aren't opponents we're ready to fight. I've been training for this, Harry insisted. Not just with the DA, but with Naruto. There's something I can try. Hermione grabbed his arm. Whatever you're planning, you don't have to do it alone. Harry met her eyes, seeing the determination there. I need you here, Hermione. You and Ron are the only ones who can lead the DA if something happens. The unspoken implication hung between them. Harry pulled away, heading for the door. Harry, Neville called after him. Be careful. We're counting on you. The sincerity in Neville's voice struck Harry deeply. These weren't just his friends anymore, they were his comrades, looking to him for leadership. The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders as he slipped out into the corridor. The castle had become a battlefield. Evidence of combat scarred the ancient stones, blast marks from spells, gouges in the walls from what looked like kunai knives, and in one corridor, a section of floor had been completely transmuted into sand. Harry moved cautiously, hearing distant sounds of fighting. His destination wasn't the entrance hall where Naruto faced Orochi, but a secluded courtyard where he might have enough space and time for what he needed to attempt. The snow-covered courtyard was eerily peaceful compared to the chaos inside. Harry found a sheltered corner, sat cross-legged, and closed his eyes, just as he practiced with Naruto and Elder Maji. Empty yourself, he whispered, recalling Maji's rumbling instructions. Become a vessel for the energy around you. Harry focused on his breathing, pushing away the fear and urgency of the situation. He visualized his magical core, a sphere of light within him, and gradually extended his awareness outward. To his surprise, it was easier here than it had ever been during practice. The natural energy surrounding Hogwarts was vibrant and responsive, almost eager to connect with him. He felt it brushing against his consciousness, ancient, powerful, alive. Let it flow through you, not into you, he reminded himself, careful not to draw too much too quickly. Slowly, the energy began to merge with his magic. Harry felt the change happening, his senses expanding, his awareness sharpening. The castle came alive around him in a way he'd never experienced. He could feel the hundreds of students gathered in the great hall, their collective anxiety pulsing like a heartbeat. He sensed the combat throughout the building, flares of magical and chakra energy clashing in violent bursts. And he felt something else, a dark, hungry presence in the depths of the castle, pulsing with unnatural power. Something was happening in the dungeons, something that made his newly enhanced senses recoil. Harry opened his eyes, knowing he'd succeeded at least partially. Though he couldn't see his own face, he could feel the change, a burning sensation around his eyes where Naruto had said sage markings would appear. His vision was sharper, colors more vivid. When he stood, his body felt simultaneously lighter and more grounded. In perfect sage mode, he murmured, recognizing the state Naruto had described. It wouldn't last long, perhaps a few minutes, but it might be enough. With his enhanced senses guiding him, Harry raced toward the dungeons. The corridor leading to the potions classroom was unnaturally cold. Frost crystallized on the stone walls, and Harry's breath misted before him. As he approached, the malevolent energy he'd sensed grew stronger, a churning vortex of wrongness that made his stomach twist. Voices echoed from within the classroom. Harry crept closer, his sage-enhanced senses allowing him to move with unusual stealth. "The convergence point is beneath us," a female voice was saying. "The ritual is destabilizing the barrier, but we need more power to create a permanent breach." "The castle resists," replied a second voice, male, with an accent Harry didn't recognize. "Its ancient magic fights against the merging." "Lord Orochi anticipated this," the woman responded. "That's why we need the boy. His connection to natural energy, combined with his innate magical signature, will allow us to bypass the castle's defenses." Harry froze. They were looking for him specifically, not just as Harry Potter, but because of his training with natural energy. "The extraction is ready," the man said. "Once we have him, the ritual can be completed. The barriers between worlds will dissolve, and chakra and magic will flow together once more. As it was in the beginning," the woman intoned, "so shall it be again." Harry had heard enough. Whatever ritual they were performing threatened not just Hogwarts but both worlds. He needed to disrupt it immediately. Drawing his wand, he considered his options. Direct confrontation seemed unwise, he didn't know the capabilities of these convergence members. But his enhanced senses had revealed something useful. The ritual's setup appeared to include a complex array of symbols drawn on the floor in some kind of luminescent substance. Harry pointed his wand at the classroom's ceiling, focused his sage-enhanced magic, and whispered, "Aguamenti Maxima." Water erupted from his wand with 10 times the force he'd ever produced before, blasting through the partially open door and flooding the classroom. Screams of surprise and anger followed, along with the satisfying sound of ritual components being washed away. "The array! Protect the array," the female voice shrieked. Harry didn't wait to see the results. He was already running, his imperfect sage mode fading rapidly after the expenditure of magical energy. Behind him, he heard furious pursuit. "There he is! The Potter boy!" A spell whizzed past Harry's ear, striking the wall beside him with enough force to crack the ancient stone. He ducked around a corner, heart pounding as he felt his sage enhancement slipping away completely. Wind style, gale palm. The corridor behind Harry exploded with pressurized air, sending him tumbling forward. He scrambled to his feet, facing his pursuers, a witch with steel-gray hair and strange markings tattooed on her face, and a man whose hands seemed to glow with visible chakra. "Impressive, child," the witch said, studying him with clinical interest. "You've achieved partial harmony with natural energy. Lord Orochi will be pleased." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Harry replied, raising his wand. The witch smiled coldly. "You misunderstand. We don't need you willing, just alive. She raised her wand while her companion formed hand signs. Harry braced himself, knowing he was outmatched without his sage enhancement. Stupefy. A jet of red light shot past Harry, striking the male attacker and sending him crashing into the wall. Harry turned to see Neville, Luna, and Ginny running toward him, wands drawn. Thought you might need backup, Ginny explained, taking position beside him. The witch snarled in frustration. Children playing at war. How tiresome. She slashed her wand in a complex pattern while simultaneously forming a one-handed seal, a hybrid technique unlike anything Harry had seen before. The stone floor beneath them transformed into a quicksand-like substance, immediately beginning to pull them down. Finite incantatum. Ginny shouted, but her counterspell had no effect on the hybrid technique. We need to match her power, Luna said with unusual urgency. Harry, remember what Professor Naruto taught us about combining our magic. In defense class, Naruto had demonstrated how ninja teams amplified their effectiveness by coordinating their techniques. Harry hadn't thought the principle would apply to wizarding magic, but Luna's intuitive leap made a strange kind of sense. Everyone, cast finite together, Harry instructed. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Finite incantatum, they shouted in unison, wands pointed at the quicksand floor. The combined spell pulsed with unexpected power, not just neutralizing the quicksand but sending a shockwave that knocked the witch off her feet. Her concentration broken, the male attacker began to stir. Run! Harry urged. They sprinted down the corridor, heading for the main staircase. Behind them, the witch's furious voice called out an incantation Harry didn't recognize. The very air seemed to thicken around them, making movement difficult. We can't outrun them, Neville panted. Not if they can manipulate the environment like this. Harry knew he was right. These weren't ordinary opponents, and they weren't fighting by conventional magical rules. They needed help. As if summoned by the thought, a familiar voice echoed from above. Dynamic entry. A green blur shot down the stairwell, resolving into the figure of Naruto as he delivered a powerful kick to the pursuing witch, sending her flying backward. He landed lightly between the students and their attackers, his expression grim. Get to the Great Hall, he ordered, not taking his eyes off the witch and her companion, who was now fully recovered. I'll hold them here. Professor, Harry began, they're performing some kind of ritual in the potions classroom. They're trying to break down the barrier between our worlds. Naruto nodded. I know. Orochi's true objective. His attack on the castle was just a diversion. Then we need to stop the ritual completely, Harry insisted. I only disrupted it temporarily. The witch laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the stone corridor. Too late, child. The process has begun. The barriers are already weakening. As if to confirm her words, the air around them seemed to shimmer, reality itself wavering like heat over summer pavement. Harry felt a strange pulling sensation, as though the fabric of space was stretching. Naruto formed a familiar cross-shaped hand sign. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. A dozen copies of Naruto appeared, immediately moving to surround the students protectively. My clones will get you safely to the Great Hall, the real Naruto explained quickly. I need to find Orochi and end this. But the ritual, Harry protested. Trust me, Harry. Naruto's blue eyes held absolute certainty. You've done your part. Now let me do mine. The original Naruto disappeared in a blur of speed, leaving his clones to escort the students. As they made their way upstairs, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial, that his role in this conflict wasn't finished. The strange distortions in the air grew more pronounced as they climbed. Twice, they encountered pockets where gravity seemed altered, forcing them to navigate carefully. In one corridor, they passed a window that looked out onto a landscape that definitely wasn't Scotland, a forest of massive trees unlike anything Harry had ever seen. The worlds are bleeding into each other, Luna observed with her characteristic calm. How fascinating. Not the word I'd use, Ginny muttered, eyeing a section of wall that appeared to be phasing in and out of solidity. They had nearly reached the Great Hall when a massive explosion rocked the castle. The floor buckled beneath them, and one of Naruto's clones barely managed to grab Neville before he fell into a suddenly appearing crevice. What was that? Ginny gasped. Harry's scar blazed with sudden, searing pain, a sensation he hadn't felt in months. He clutched his forehead, momentarily blinded by the intensity. Harry! Luna steadied him as he swayed. What's wrong? Voldemort, Harry managed through gritted teeth. He's here. I can feel him. The Naruto clones exchanged alarmed glances. That's impossible, one said. The castle's defenses, the ritual, Harry realized, forcing himself to think through the pain. It's not just breaking down the barriers between your world and ours. It's weakening all magical protections around Hogwarts. Another explosion, closer this time. The ceiling above them cracked ominously. Move, a Naruto clone shouted, pushing them forward as chunks of stone began to fall. They raced the final distance to the Great Hall, bursting through the doors to find chaos. Students were huddled in terrified groups as professors attempted to maintain order. Through Flitwick's enchanted ceiling, they could see dark-robed figures materializing on the grounds, Death Eaters, bypassing Hogwarts' ancient anti-apparition wards. It's a coordinated attack, Hermione said, rushing to meet them. The Convergence and Death Eaters working together. Not together, Harry corrected, his scar still throbbing. Taking advantage of the same weakness. The Convergence ritual is destabilizing the castle's magic, creating openings for Voldemort's forces. Professor McGonagall approached, her usually immaculate appearance now marred by dust and a small cut above her eye. Potter, what do you know about this? Quickly, Harry explained what he'd overheard in the dungeons and what had happened since. McGonagall's expression grew more grave with each word. This confirms our worst fears, she said when he finished. Albus suspected that forces from Professor Uzumaki's world might attempt to exploit the dimensional passage. That's why he arranged the exchange program in the first place, to have an expert on hand if such an attempt was made. But he didn't anticipate Voldemort taking advantage of it, Harry concluded. Indeed not. McGonagall straightened, her voice taking on the commanding tone that could silence an entire hall of students. We must evacuate the castle immediately. Prefects, organize your houses. 7th years, assist the younger students. We will use the secret passages to Hogsmeade. The passages might not be safe, Harry warned, remembering the spatial distortions they'd encountered. The barriers between worlds are breaking down everywhere. We have no choice, Potter. The castle is no longer secure. As if to emphasize her point, the enchanted ceiling flickered, showing a nightmarish scene on the grounds. Death Eaters dueled with Convergence members in a chaotic battle, while Hogwarts professors attempted to protect the castle itself. In the midst of it all, Harry glimpsed Naruto, now in full sage mode, confronting the pale-haired Orochi. We need to help him, Harry said, watching Naruto dodge a particularly vicious combination of jutsu and dark magic from Orochi. You will do no such thing, McGonagall replied sternly. Your safety is paramount, Potter. With all due respect, Professor, Harry countered, I'm the only other person in the castle who's trained in natural energy techniques. Naruto has been teaching me for months. I might be able to help disrupt the ritual permanently. McGonagall hesitated, clearly torn between her duty to protect her student and the recognition that Harry possessed unique abilities relevant to their crisis. I can reach sage state again, Harry pressed. I've done it once already today. If Naruto and I combine our approaches, we might be able to re-establish the natural balance that the ritual is disrupting. Before McGonagall could respond, the doors to the Great Hall burst open. Snape strode in, his black robes billowing dramatically despite the disheveled state of the rest of his appearance. The Dark Lord approaches the castle personally, he announced without preamble. We have perhaps 10 minutes before he breaches the main entrance. The news sent a wave of panic through the assembled students. McGonagall's expression hardened with resolve. Begin the evacuation immediately, she ordered. Severus, Filius, secure the passages. Pomona, Horace, escort the first groups. She turned back to Harry, her decision made. Potter, I cannot officially sanction what you're proposing. However. She pressed her lips together, then continued more quietly, if you were to slip away during the confusion of evacuation, I might not notice your absence immediately. Harry nodded, understanding the tacit permission. Thank you, Professor. Harry, you can't face you-know-who alone, Ron protested, overhearing the exchange. I'm not going after Voldemort, Harry clarified. I'm going to help Naruto stop the ritual. That's the priority. Hermione looked torn between logic and friendship. The ritual site will be heavily guarded. You'll need help getting there. We'll create a diversion, Fred and George Weasley offered simultaneously, appearing at Harry's elbow with identical determined expressions. Got some new products, that need battlefield testing, perfect opportunity, really. Despite everything, Harry felt a surge of gratitude for his friend's unwavering support. All right. Fred, George, can you create a distraction near the entrance hall? I need to get to the dungeons without being seen by either Death Eaters or Convergence members. Consider it done, Fred confirmed with a mock salute. What about us? Ron demanded, gesturing to himself, Hermione, and the other DA members who had gathered around. Harry considered. They needed to be part of the evacuation, to help protect the younger students, but he also knew his friends wouldn't accept being left behind entirely. Hermione, you're the best with protective spells. I need you to help secure the evacuation route. Before she could protest, he added, it's the most important job, Hermione. If Voldemort breaks through, you'll be the last line of defense. She nodded reluctantly, recognizing the logic. Ron, Ginny, Luna, Neville, I need you to help me reach the potions classroom. Once I'm there, you join the evacuation. No arguments, he added firmly, seeing Ron's expression. Someone needs to make sure the younger students get out safely. And if you succeed? Neville asked quietly. How will you get out? Harry hadn't thought that far ahead. Naruto will be there. We'll figure something out. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. As the evacuation began in earnest, Harry gathered his impromptu team near a side door. Ready? He asked, meeting each of their eyes. Their determined nods told him everything he needed to know. The journey to the dungeons was a nightmare of shifting reality and unexpected dangers. Twice they encountered pockets where the laws of physics seemed optional, gravity reversed or sideways, air solidifying into visible currents. Death Eaters and Convergence members fought throughout the castle, forcing them to take circuitous routes and hidden passages. Fred and George's diversion, something involving portable swamps and what appeared to be miniature firework dragons, had successfully drawn attention away from the dungeon entrance. The twins gave Harry a thumbs up before heading off to assist with the evacuation, their part played. This is where we split up, Harry told the others as they reached the corridor leading to the potions classroom. Get to the evacuation point. Help the professors. Harry. Ron began, clearly wanting to argue. Please, Ron. I need to know you're keeping everyone else safe. After a moment's hesitation, Ron nodded. Be careful, mate. We'll see you in Hogsmeade, Ginny added firmly, as though daring the universe to make her words untrue. One by one, they left, each giving Harry a final look of encouragement. When he was alone, Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the meditation techniques Elder Magi had taught him. Finding the calm center was infinitely harder now than it had been earlier. The castle's destabilizing magic created interference, and his own anxiety about what lay ahead made concentration difficult. Harry forced himself to breathe deeply, visualizing the great oak tree in Elder Maji's clearing, ancient, rooted, connected to the earth's energy. Gradually, he felt the familiar tingling sensation as his awareness expanded. Natural energy surrounded him, but it was chaotic, disturbed by the ritual that continued to pull at the fabric of reality. Harry struggled to create harmony between this turbulent energy and his own magic. "I am part of it, not separate from it," he whispered Elder Maji's teaching. "I do not command, I commune." Something clicked, a mental shift that suddenly made the connection easier. The natural energy responded to his changed approach, flowing through him rather than being pulled by him. Harry felt the transformation begin, the burning sensation around his eyes as sage markings formed, the heightening of his senses, the feeling of being simultaneously more powerful and more grounded. When he opened his eyes, the world looked different. Energy patterns were visible to him now, currents and eddies flowing through the castle walls. Most significantly, he could see the wrongness emanating from the potions classroom, a spiraling vortex of unnaturally merged magic and chakra. Harry moved forward, his sage-enhanced body moving with a grace and stealth he'd never possessed before. As he approached the classroom, he could hear voices chanting in an unknown language. The door stood ajar, allowing him to peer inside. The classroom had been transformed. All furniture had been removed, and an intricate pattern of symbols covered the floor, glowing with a sickly purple light. At 5 points around this array stood robed figures, each simultaneously performing hand signs and wand movements. In the center, a swirling portal was beginning to form, a tear in reality through which Harry glimpsed strange landscapes, massive trees, rocky mountains, what looked like a village built into the face of a cliff. Most disturbing was the figure overseeing the ritual, not Orochi, as Harry had expected, but someone he recognized with a shock of horror. Lucius Malfoy. The Death Eater's aristocratic features were twisted in concentration as he directed the ritual, occasionally consulting an ancient-looking scroll covered in symbols that matched those on the floor. Beside him stood the witch Harry had encountered earlier, her tattooed face illuminated by the portal's pulsing light. "The convergence approaches completion," she reported. "The worlds begin to merge." "Excellent," Malfoy replied, satisfaction evident in his voice. "The Dark Lord will be pleased. When the barriers fall completely, the power of both worlds will be his to command." Harry's mind raced. The cooperation between the Convergence and Death Eaters wasn't coincidental or opportunistic, it was planned. Somehow, Voldemort had made contact with this Orochi person, forging an alliance to harness the combined power of magic and chakra. He needed to disrupt the ritual, but how? The 5 channelers maintained the energy flow, while Malfoy and the witch directed it. A direct attack would likely fail against so many opponents. Harry remembered what Naruto had taught him about sage techniques. They didn't just enhance physical abilities, they created a deeper connection to the natural world. The ritual was forcing an unnatural merger of energies, disrupting the balance that natural energy required. Perhaps he could use that very connection to counteract it. Taking a deep breath, Harry stepped into the doorway, his wand held loosely at his side. His appearance created an immediate reaction. "Potter!" Malfoy hissed, his eyes widening at the sight of the sage markings around Harry's eyes. "Seize him. We need him for the final phase." 2 of the channelers broke formation, lunging toward Harry. He didn't attempt to run or fight. Instead, he dropped to one knee, placed his palm against the stone floor, and pushed his sage-enhanced magic directly into the castle itself. "I need your help," he whispered to Hogwarts. "Show me the true pattern." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Harry felt it, a response from deep within the castle foundations, a resonance that matched his own sage energy. The ancient stones of Hogwarts, saturated with 1,000 years of magic and built upon natural ley lines, recognized his harmonized state. Patterns of light, different from the ritual's purple glow, began spreading from Harry's hand, golden-green lines that followed the castle's original magical blueprint. Where they intersected with the ritual array, the purple symbols flickered and destabilized. Stop him, the witch screamed, recognizing the threat. But it was too late. Harry's connection to Hogwarts' fundamental magic grew stronger, the counteracting pattern expanding rapidly across the floor. The ritual array began to fragment, its carefully constructed symbols dissolving wherever the castle's true magical framework reasserted itself. The portal in the center of the room fluctuated wildly, its edges pulsing as it began to collapse inward. The channelers frantically tried to stabilize it, their hybrid techniques growing more desperate. "No!" Malfoy shouted. "The Dark Lord comes. The way must remain open." The witch rounded on Harry, her face contorted with rage. She raised her wand, beginning an incantation that made the air crackle with dark energy. A flash of orange intercepted her attack. Naruto stood before Harry, having appeared so suddenly it seemed like teleportation. "Nice work, Harry," he said without turning around. "You've destabilized the ritual array." "But the portal's still open," Harry pointed out, maintaining his connection to the castle's magic. Sweat beaded on his forehead from the effort of channeling so much energy. Not for long. Naruto's eyes had transformed into the horizontal pupils of Sage Mode. "I'll close it from this side, you keep reinforcing the castle's natural patterns." The witch attacked again, this time with a combination of wand and hand signs. "You'll doom both worlds, Uzumaki. The merger is inevitable, fighting it only causes more damage." Naruto formed a Rasengan in his palm, but unlike the blue sphere Harry had seen before, this one glowed with golden-green energy similar to the patterns Harry had awakened in the floor. Sage Art, Massive Rasengan. The technique expanded rapidly, dwarfing any version Harry had previously witnessed. When Naruto launched it toward the portal, the massive sphere seemed to draw in the chaotic energy rather than simply destroying it, absorbing the disruption and converting it back to balanced natural energy. The portal began to shrink, its edges stabilizing as the natural order reasserted itself. The channelers abandoned their positions, fleeing toward the door as the ritual collapsed. Malfoy, seeing his plan unraveling, pointed his wand directly at Harry. "Avada, Expelliarmus." Harry reacted instinctively, his sage-enhanced magic making the simple disarming charm explosively powerful. Malfoy's wand not only flew from his hand but shattered mid-air, splinters raining down as the Death Eater himself was thrown against the wall with bone-crushing force. The tattooed witch made one final, desperate attempt, forming complex signs with both hands while chanting in an unknown language. The very air around her darkened, coalescing into what appeared to be solid shadows that she hurled toward the shrinking portal. "No!" Naruto shouted, recognizing the technique. "Harry, break your connection to the floor. Now!" Harry pulled his hand away just as the shadow technique struck the portal. Instead of closing completely, the portal pulsed violently, then inverted, turning from purple to pitch black. A terrible cold emanated from it, reminiscent of Dementors but infinitely more profound. "What's happening?" Harry gasped, his sage enhancement faltering under the onslaught of unnatural energy. "She's turned it into a vacuum," Naruto explained grimly, forming protective hand signs. "It's pulling in all surrounding energy to sustain itself." The witch laughed, a sound of triumph despite her failed ritual. "If we cannot merge the worlds, we will consume them both. The void hungers, Uzumaki." The black portal began pulling everything toward it, papers, potion ingredients, even the stone dust from the damaged floor. More alarmingly, Harry could feel it tugging at his magical core, attempting to drain his energy directly. Naruto stepped forward, placing himself between Harry and the portal. "Get out of here, Harry. Find the others. Make sure everyone's evacuated." "I'm not leaving you to face this alone," Harry protested. "This isn't your fight anymore," Naruto insisted. "You did your part, brilliantly. Now I need to seal this breach before it consumes the castle." The witch cackled. "You can't seal it, Ninetales. The void consumes all energy, even your precious natural harmony." Naruto turned to Harry, his expression resolute. Go. Please. I have a technique that might work, but it requires. He hesitated. Let's just say it's better if no one else is nearby. Something in Naruto's voice, a quiet certainty tinged with resignation, made Harry realize the professor was contemplating a last resort with potentially devastating consequences. There has to be another way, Harry argued. The portal pulsed again, growing larger as it consumed more energy. The pull intensified, forcing Naruto to channel chakra to his feet to remain in place. Harry found himself sliding forward despite his efforts to resist. Harry, Naruto said, his voice calm despite everything, sometimes protecting what's precious means making difficult choices. You understand that better than most. Before Harry could respond, a new voice entered the conversation, cold, high, and terribly familiar. How touching. The foreign protector sacrificing himself for the boy who lived. Lord Voldemort stood in the doorway, his snake-like face regarding the scene with calculated interest. Behind him loomed several Death Eaters, wands drawn. Tom Riddle, Naruto acknowledged without turning. Your timing is impeccable. Unfortunately, you're too late. The ritual has failed. Has it? Voldemort's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. I see a breach between worlds that continues to grow. Perhaps not as controlled as Orochi promised, but useful nonetheless. The tattooed witch prostrated herself before Voldemort. My lord, we can still harness the void. Its hunger can be directed. Silence, Voldemort cut her off. Your failure displeases me. Orochi assured me your ritual would create a stable merger, not this, chaotic disruption. Orochi lied, Naruto stated flatly. He has his own agenda, one that doesn't include sharing power with you or anyone else. Voldemort's red eyes narrowed. Perhaps. But I still have what I came for. His gaze fixed on Harry. The prophecy child, with new power I did not anticipate. How interesting. Harry felt his scar burn under Voldemort's scrutiny. His sage enhancement was fading rapidly, drained by the portal's hungry pull and his own exhaustion. You won't touch him, Naruto declared, his chakra flaring visibly around him in response to Voldemort's threat. Bold words from a man fighting a losing battle against a dimensional breach, Voldemort observed coldly. You cannot maintain your position against the void while simultaneously protecting the boy from me. He was right, Harry realized with growing horror. Naruto was already channeling most of his energy to contain the expanding portal. Defending against Voldemort simultaneously would be impossible. Harry, Naruto said quietly, not taking his eyes off the immediate threats, when I move, run. But, trust me. There was something in Naruto's voice, absolute certainty, that stopped Harry's protest. What happened next occurred too quickly for Harry to fully process. Naruto formed a shadow clone that immediately grabbed Harry and pulled him toward a side door Harry hadn't previously noticed. Simultaneously, the real Naruto created another Rasengan, this one pulsing with an intensity that made the air itself vibrate. Sage Art, Super-Tailed Beast Rasengan. The technique erupted with such force that the entire room shook. Voldemort hastily erected a shield, but even his considerable power was taxed by the fringe effects of Naruto's attack. The portal contracted violently, then expanded again, its pull now so strong that furniture from adjacent rooms began sliding toward the classroom. Now! Naruto's clone shouted, pushing Harry through the side door just as the real Naruto slammed his ultimate technique directly into the heart of the void portal. Light and darkness exploded together. The last thing Harry saw before the clone shoved him down a hidden passage was Naruto surrounded by a glowing golden energy shaped like a massive fox, 9 tails of pure chakra extending outward to contain the collapsing portal. Then the passage sealed behind him, and Harry was alone in darkness, the clone having disappeared in the energy backlash. Lumos, Harry whispered, his voice shaking. His wand illuminated a narrow stone tunnel that seemed to slope upward. With no other options, Harry began to climb, his thoughts consumed with what might be happening behind him. Had Naruto succeeded in closing the portal? Had Voldemort escaped? Was the castle itself still standing? After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, the passage ended at a blank stone wall. Harry pushed against it experimentally, and to his surprise, it swung outward like a door. He emerged into the courtyard where he had first achieved Sage Mode earlier that day. The castle still stood, though smoke rose from several damaged sections. The strange spatial distortions he'd observed earlier seemed to have stabilized, no impossible landscapes visible through the windows, no fluctuations in gravity or air consistency. Most significantly, Harry could sense a return to natural balance in the magical energies surrounding Hogwarts. Whatever Naruto had done, it had worked, the breach was sealed, the world separated once more. But at what cost? The evacuation had largely succeeded by the time Harry made his way to Hogsmeade. The village was crowded with Hogwarts students and staff, everyone gathering in designated safe houses while Ministry Aurors, finally responding to the crisis, secured the perimeter. Harry! Hermione's cry of relief cut through the crowd as she spotted him approaching the 3 broomsticks, which had been converted into a command center. She rushed forward, engulfing him in a fierce hug. "We thought, when the explosion happened, I'm all right," Harry assured her, though "all right" was a relative term given everything he'd experienced. "The ritual's been stopped. The breach is closed." Ron appeared beside them, his face showing the strain of the past hours. "What about the Death Eaters? And those Convergence Nutters?" "I don't know," Harry admitted. "Voldemort was there, at the end. And Naruto." He swallowed hard, unable to continue. "Professor Uzumaki contained the breach," came Professor McGonagall's voice as she approached, her usually perfect bun now coming undone. "At considerable personal risk." "Is he?" Harry couldn't bring himself to complete the question. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. "We don't know, Potter. When the breach collapsed, there was a massive energy discharge. Those closest to the epicenter." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "We haven't been able to determine casualty details yet. But the castle is secure again?" Hermione asked. "It appears so. Professor Flitwick and I performed diagnostic enchantments from a safe distance. The magical foundations have restabilized, and the spatial distortions have ceased." Harry felt a complex mix of emotions, relief that the immediate crisis had passed, grief at the likely loss of his mentor, and lingering worry about Voldemort's involvement. "You should know," he told McGonagall quietly, "Voldemort was working with the Convergence. Or at least, with some of them. Lucius Malfoy was directing the ritual." McGonagall's lips thinned to a tight line. "That confirms our worst fears." Albus suspected the Dark Lord might attempt to harness foreign powers to bolster his return. "Professor," Harry hesitated, "what Naruto taught me, the natural energy techniques, they helped me disrupt the ritual. I think that's why he was training me all along. He knew something like this might happen." Professor Uzumaki shared certain concerns with Albus before his departure, McGonagall acknowledged. The Dimensional Exchange Program was never solely about educational cooperation. Before Harry could press for more details, commotion erupted at the village entrance. Aurors were converging on a figure who had just appeared, a tall, distinctive silhouette with spiky hair. "Naruto!" Harry exclaimed, pushing through the crowd. It was indeed Naruto, though in a state Harry had never seen him. His clothes were torn and scorched, his face streaked with blood from a cut across his forehead. He leaned heavily on a makeshift staff, clearly struggling to remain upright. Most notably, his usual vibrant chakra presence was dramatically diminished, barely perceptible even to Harry's enhanced senses. Aurors surrounded him, wands raised cautiously. "Stand down," McGonagall commanded, her authority undiminished despite recent events. "Professor Uzumaki is under Hogwarts protection." The Aurors hesitated, then lowered their wands, allowing Harry to reach his mentor. "You made it," Harry said, relief washing over him. Naruto managed a weak version of his usual grin. Told you to trust me, didn't I? His voice was raspy, as though he'd been shouting for hours. The breach is sealed. Completely this time. And Voldemort? Escaped when the portal collapsed. Along with most of his Death Eaters. Naruto's expression darkened. And Orochi. The snake-eyed man. But I thought he was fighting you earlier. He was. Then he wasn't. Naruto shook his head wearily. Orochi has always been adaptable. When he realized the ritual had failed, he fled. Probably back to my world through a smaller portal he prepared as a contingency. McGonagall joined them, her face showing uncharacteristic concern. You require medical attention, Professor Uzumaki. Just chakra exhaustion, Naruto dismissed, though he accepted her support as they moved toward the 3 broomsticks. I had to use certain reserves to contain the void portal. Something in his tone made Harry suspect there was much more to the story, but now wasn't the time to press for details. The important thing was that Naruto had survived, the castle was secure, and the immediate crisis had passed. Though as Harry looked around at the shaken students and the damaged castle in the distance, he knew this was merely a respite, not an ending. Voldemort had revealed another aspect of his strategy, seeking power beyond conventional wizardry. The convergence, or what remained of it, still threatened the boundaries between worlds. And somewhere out there, this mysterious Orochi plotted his next move. The war had entered a new phase, with stakes higher than anyone had imagined. In the days following what the Daily Prophet termed the Hogwarts incident, the wizarding world buzzed with conflicting accounts and wild speculation. The ministry attempted to downplay events, initially claiming it had been merely an unauthorized magical experiment gone wrong, but too many witnesses had seen Death Eaters on the grounds for this narrative to hold. For the first time, the prophet reluctantly acknowledged the possibility that Harry and Dumbledore had been telling the truth about Voldemort's return. Though they couched it in careful language, alleged sightings, and unconfirmed reports, the shift in tone was significant. Hogwarts itself remained closed for a week while teams of cursebreakers, dimensional experts, and magical architects assessed the damage and ensured no weaknesses remained in the castle's protective enchantments. Students were temporarily housed in Hogsmeade or sent home to their families. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had been given quarters at the 3 broomsticks, along with several other students whose involvement in the DA had made them targets for potential Death Eater reprisals. Aurors maintained a constant presence in the village, creating an atmosphere that was simultaneously reassuring and tense. Naruto had been taken to St. Mungo's initially, but had discharged himself after just 2 days, returning to Hogsmeade to assist with the castle's restoration. Though he maintained his cheerful demeanor, Harry noticed a new heaviness in his movements, a weariness that hadn't been there before. On the evening before students were to return to the castle, Harry found Naruto sitting alone on a hill overlooking Hogwarts. The setting sun cast long shadows across the grounds, giving the ancient building a melancholy beauty. "Mind if I join you?" Harry asked, approaching cautiously. Naruto gestured to the grass beside him. "I was hoping you'd find me, actually. We haven't had a chance to talk properly since everything happened." Harry sat, noticing that Naruto was holding something, a 3-pronged kunai knife with unusual markings on the handle. He seemed to be turning it over absently as he gazed at the castle. "How are you feeling?" Harry asked after a moment of comfortable silence. "Better. My chakra is recovering, slowly." Naruto tucked the strange kunai away. "How about you? That was your first time maintaining Sage Mode in combat." "It was intense," Harry admitted. "I can still feel it sometimes, like an echo. The connection to natural energy. That's normal. Once you've harmonized with it, part of you always remembers." Naruto smiled slightly. "You did well, Harry. Better than I expected, honestly." Using Hogwarts' own magical foundation to disrupt the ritual was inspired. "It just felt right," Harry shrugged. Like the castle was showing me what to do. Naruto nodded. The best sage techniques often feel that way, not like you're performing them, but like you're allowing them to happen through you. They fell silent again, watching as lights began to appear in the castle windows as restoration work continued into the evening. Professor, Harry said finally, when you contained the portal, what exactly did you do? I saw something, an energy shaped like a giant fox. Naruto's expression grew thoughtful. In my world, I'm what's called a jinchuriki, a human vessel containing a tailed beast. The nine-tailed fox, Kurama, has been sealed within me since the day I was born. Harry stared at him, processing this revelation. You have a creature inside you. It's more complicated than that now. Kurama and I are partners, friends even, though it wasn't always that way. Naruto gazed at his palm, where Harry could just make out a faint pattern that he'd occasionally glimpsed before. To seal the void portal, I needed to use our combined power, what we call tailed beast mode. Like sage mode, but different. Much more powerful, but also more taxing. It nearly depleted both our chakra reserves completely. The parallel to Harry's own situation, carrying a fragment of Voldemort's soul, wasn't lost on him. So you understand what it's like, he said quietly. To have something inside you that others fear. To be defined by it. Naruto's blue eyes, normally so bright with optimism, showed a depth of understanding that went beyond his apparent age. When I was your age, the village feared and hated me because of Kurama. They called me monster, demon, freak. They saw the fox, not the boy. The word struck Harry deeply. My aunt and uncle, they called me freak too. Because of my magic. Fear of the unknown is universal, I guess. Naruto plucked a blade of grass, twirling it between his fingers. In my world or yours, people lash out at what they don't understand. How did you deal with it? Harry asked. The hatred, I mean. Badly, at first, Naruto admitted with a rueful smile. I acted out, pulled pranks, did anything to get attention, even negative attention was better than being invisible. His expression grew more serious. But eventually, I realized the only way to change how people saw me was to show them who I really was, through my actions and choices. And it worked. Eventually. Now I'm Hokage, leader of the same village that once scorned me. He chuckled at Harry's surprised expression. Yeah, I left that part out of my introduction. Thought it might complicate diplomatic relations if people knew I was essentially the ninja equivalent of your minister for magic. Harry laughed despite himself. Bit different from Fudge, aren't you? God, I hope so. Naruto grinned, then grew serious again. But that's why I understand your situation, Harry. People see the boy who lived, the prophecy child, the one who survived the killing curse. They don't see just Harry, the person beneath the legend. Exactly, Harry breathed, feeling a profound relief at being so completely understood. It's like, no matter what I do, I'm never really seen for myself. It's a heavy burden, Naruto acknowledged. Being the container for something powerful, being the subject of prophecy, carrying expectations you never asked for. How do you bear it? By remembering what I'm fighting for. Naruto's gaze swept over Hogwarts, then back to Harry. Not abstract concepts like the greater good, but specific people. Friends who believe in me. A village I want to protect. A future I can see clearly in my mind. He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Find your precious people, Harry. Fight for them, not for prophecies or expectations. That's how you maintain your humanity when the world tries to turn you into a weapon or a symbol. The wisdom in those words resonated deeply with Harry. He thought of Ron and Hermione, of the DA members who had followed him despite the risks, of Sirius and the Weasleys and everyone who had shown him genuine care. I think I understand, he said quietly. Good. Naruto stood, offering Harry a hand up. Because there's something else we need to discuss, your continued training. Harry blinked in surprise. You're staying at Hogwarts, then? Even after everything that's happened? Especially after everything that's happened. Naruto's expression was resolute. The breach may be sealed, but both our worlds remain in danger. Orochi escaped back to my dimension, but he'll find another way through eventually. And your Voldemort has now had a taste of what chakra techniques can offer. You think they'll continue working together? Unlikely as true allies, both are too power-hungry to share willingly. But they might maintain a temporary alliance of convenience. Naruto gazed toward the forest. Either way, we need to be prepared. Your natural affinity for Sage Mode is rare and valuable. With more training, you could achieve perfect harmony. Hope kindled in Harry's chest. Despite the exhaustion and trauma of recent events, the thought of continuing to develop this connection to natural energy, this power that felt so right, so balanced, was deeply appealing. I want to learn, he said firmly. Whatever it takes. Naruto smiled, but there was a seriousness behind it that Harry hadn't seen before. It won't be easy. What I've taught you so far is just the beginning. True mastery requires facing parts of yourself you might prefer to avoid. You mean the connection to Voldemort? The piece of him inside me? Among other things. Naruto's gaze was penetrating. Natural energy requires harmony and balance. The fragment of Voldemort's soul creates discord within you, a fundamental imbalance that limits your potential. Harry felt a chill. Are you saying I need to get rid of it to master Sage Mode completely? I'm saying you need to understand it. Acknowledge it. Find a way to maintain your own integrity despite its presence. Naruto's expression softened. I don't have all the answers, Harry. But I do know that running from difficult truths never works. Whatever darkness exists within you, whether placed there by Voldemort or born of your own fears and resentments, it must be faced, not denied. The conversation had taken a more profound turn than Harry had anticipated. He thought about the anger he'd carried all year, at being isolated over the summer, at being disbelieved and slandered, at Dumbledore's continued distance. He thought about the violent impulses he sometimes felt, the flashes of alien emotion that weren't entirely his own. I'm willing to try, he said finally. That's all anyone can ask. Naruto glanced at the darkening sky. We should head back. Big day tomorrow, students returning, classes resuming, pretending everything's normal while preparing for the next crisis. As they walked back toward Hogsmeade, Harry felt a curious mixture of dread and determination. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with dangers both external and internal. Yet for the first time since Voldemort's return, he didn't feel like he was blindly reacting to events beyond his control. He was actively preparing, learning, growing stronger in ways that felt authentic rather than imposed. Whatever came next, whether from Voldemort, this mysterious Orochi, or the darkness within himself, Harry would face it with new understanding and purpose. The return to Hogwarts brought a semblance of normality, though signs of the recent battle remained visible throughout the castle. Certain corridors remained closed for ongoing repairs, and additional security measures had been implemented, including regular patrols by both professors and senior students. Most significantly, the Ministry's presence had been dramatically reduced. Fudge, facing mounting criticism for his handling of both Voldemort's return and the Hogwarts attack, had recalled Umbridge to London. Though she technically retained her title as High Inquisitor, her educational decrees had been quietly suspended, pending review. Without Umbridge's interference, the DA no longer needed to operate in secret. Naruto had formally incorporated it into the Defense Against the Dark Arts curriculum as an advanced practical study group, with Harry maintaining his role as student instructor under Naruto's supervision. Their first official meeting in the Great Hall drew nearly 100 students from all houses, including, surprisingly, a small contingent of Slytherins. Welcome, everyone, Harry began, still uncomfortable with public speaking despite months of DA leadership. For those who are new, we focus on practical defense, spells and techniques you might need in real combat situations. He glanced at Naruto, who nodded encouragingly from the sidelines. Recent events have shown us that threats can come in unexpected forms, Harry continued, gaining confidence. Today we'll be working on combining standard defensive spells with physical awareness techniques that Professor Uzumaki has been teaching in his classes. The session progressed well, with experienced DA members helping newcomers master the basics. Harry moved among the groups, correcting wand movements and demonstrating techniques, occasionally consulting with Naruto on specific points. During a water break, Harry noticed Cho-chan watching him from across the hall. When their eyes met, she smiled and approached. "You're a natural teacher," she observed. "Everyone respects you." "I just show them what I know," Harry said, automatically deflecting the praise as he always did. "It's more than that." Cho's dark eyes studied him thoughtfully. "You've changed since everything that happened. There's something different about you." Harry considered this. He had changed, not just from the events in the dungeon, but from months of training with Naruto, from connecting with natural energy, from facing the darkness both around and within him. "I suppose I have," he acknowledged. "Good different or bad different?" "Good," Cho said decisively. "More, present. Grounded." She hesitated, then added more quietly, "Cedric would be proud of what you're doing with the DA." The mention of Cedric might once have created awkwardness between them, a specter of guilt and grief neither knew how to address. Now, Harry found himself able to meet her gaze steadily. "Thank you," he said simply. "That means a lot." A comfortable silence fell between them, different from their previous interactions. No nervous butterflies, no desperate crush feelings, just a mutual understanding and respect. "Would you like to get tea in Hogsmeade next weekend?" Cho asked suddenly. "Just to talk." "As friends," she clarified. "I'd like that," Harry replied, surprised to find he genuinely meant it, not as a continuation of his long-standing crush, but as something new and potentially more meaningful. Their conversation was interrupted by Naruto calling the group back to order. As Cho rejoined her friends, Harry caught Hermione watching him with a knowing smile. "What?" he asked as she approached. "Nothing," she replied innocently. "Just noticing that you handled that conversation without turning red or stammering once. Very impressive." "Shut up," Harry muttered, but without heat. "Seriously, though," Hermione continued more genuinely, "you do seem different lately. More centered." "Sage training," Harry explained quietly. "It's not just about power or techniques. It's about finding balance, within yourself and with the world around you." Hermione's expression turned thoughtful. "Is that something others could learn? Not the full sage mode, but the balance part?" Harry considered the question. Naruto had implied that his particular affinity for natural energy was rare, but the principles of harmony and balance could benefit anyone. "Maybe," he said slowly. "I could ask Naruto about incorporating some basic meditation techniques into the DA curriculum. It might help," Hermione suggested. "Especially with everyone still processing what happened. Having tools to find inner calm could be valuable." Harry nodded, making a mental note to discuss it with Naruto later. As they rejoined the main group, he reflected on how naturally he'd fallen into this teaching role, sharing knowledge, helping others develop their abilities, finding practical applications for abstract concepts. It felt right in a way that being the boy who lived never had a role he'd chosen rather than one thrust upon him by circumstance and prophecy. February brought heavy snows and the long-awaited return of Albus Dumbledore to Hogwarts. The headmaster's reappearance was as sudden as his departure had been dramatic. He simply appeared at breakfast one morning, taking his usual seat as though he'd never been away. The great hall erupted in spontaneous applause, particularly from those who had witnessed the events of the Hogwarts incident. Even some Slytherins joined in, though Draco Malfoy and his inner circle remained pointedly silent. "Good morning," Dumbledore said when the applause finally subsided. "I trust Professor McGonagall has kept things running smoothly in my absence." This understatement, given everything that had transpired, provoked laughter and more applause for the deputy headmistress, who acknowledged it with a rare, tight smile. "I shall not bore you with the details of my recent travels," Dumbledore continued, "save to say that I return with valuable information that will help secure Hogwarts against further incursions. Classes will proceed as scheduled, though I ask that you continue to observe security protocols until further notice." His blue eyes swept the hall, briefly meeting Harry's gaze before moving on. "I am pleased to see that interhouse cooperation has improved in recent weeks. The challenges we face do not discriminate by house affiliation, and neither should our response." With that, Dumbledore sat down and helped himself to porridge as though returning from a weekend holiday rather than weeks as a fugitive from the ministry. After breakfast, Harry was unsurprised to receive a note requesting his presence in the headmaster's office. He was, however, surprised to find both Naruto and Snape already there when he arrived. "Ah, Harry," Dumbledore greeted him, gesturing to an empty chair. "Please join us. We were just discussing recent developments." Harry sat, acutely aware of Snape's cold assessment and Naruto's more encouraging presence. "First," Dumbledore began, "I must commend you for your actions during the attack. Professor Uzumaki has informed me of your role in disrupting the ritual and your impressive progress with natural energy techniques." "Thank you, sir," Harry replied, uncertain how to respond to praise from someone who had spent months avoiding him. As if reading his thoughts, Dumbledore's expression softened. "I owe you an apology, Harry. My distance this year was a mistake, born of concerns that have proven unfounded." "What concerns, sir?" Harry asked directly. Dumbledore exchanged glances with Snape before answering. "I feared that the connection between you and Voldemort might be exploited, that he might use it to see through your eyes, perhaps even possess you if our interactions grew too close." "And now?" Harry pressed. "Now I understand that your training with Professor Uzumaki has actually strengthened your mind against such intrusions." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "The harmony you've achieved with natural energy creates a barrier that Voldemort's fragmented soul cannot easily penetrate." This was news to Harry. "Is that why my scar hasn't been hurting as much lately?" "Precisely," Dumbledore confirmed. "Though the connection remains, your developing sage abilities have altered its nature. Your mind is becoming more integrated, more wholly your own." Harry turned to Naruto. "You knew this would happen." "I suspected," Naruto admitted. "In my world, those who achieve harmony with natural energy develop resistance to certain types of mental infiltration. I hoped the principle would apply to your connection with Voldemort. Which brings us to our current situation," Dumbledore continued. "Lord Voldemort has been quiet since the attack, regrouping and reassessing. Our intelligence suggests he was displeased with the outcome of his alliance with this Orochi individual." Snape spoke for the first time. "The Dark Lord does not tolerate failure. Those Death Eaters who participated in the ritual and survived have been severely punished." "Lucius Malfoy?" Harry asked, remembering the Death Eater's role. "Critically injured during the portal collapse," Snape replied dispassionately. "Currently recovering at his manor under house arrest, having fallen from the Dark Lord's favor." Harry felt a twinge of satisfaction at this news, though he knew it likely meant Draco would be even more antagonistic than usual. "As for Orochi," Naruto picked up the thread, "he's returned to my dimension, but the breach weakened barriers between our worlds. He'll find another way through eventually, likely with a different approach. Which means we must prepare on multiple fronts," Dumbledore concluded. "Professor Snape will continue his vital intelligence work. Professor Uzumaki will enhance the castle's defenses against dimensional incursions and continue training you, Harry, in natural energy techniques." "And you, sir?" Harry asked. Dumbledore's expression grew grave. "I shall be pursuing certain artifacts that Voldemort values highly. Items that must be secured or destroyed before he can utilize them fully." Something in the headmaster's tone suggested this was a dangerous undertaking. Harry wanted to ask more, but Dumbledore's subtle head shake indicated this wasn't the time. For now, the headmaster continued, I believe it prudent for you to continue both your regular studies and your special training with Professor Uzumaki. The skills you're developing may prove crucial in the coming conflict. Especially considering the prophecy, Harry said before he could stop himself. Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. Indeed. Though I had not planned to discuss that particular matter today. Potter should know what he faces, Snape said unexpectedly. Keeping him ignorant serves no purpose except to ensure he blunders into danger unprepared, as is his habit. Coming from Snape, this was as close to support as Harry had ever received. He stared at the potion's master in surprise. A fair point, Severus, Dumbledore acknowledged. Very well. Harry, there is much you should know, about the prophecy, about Voldemort's past, and about certain decisions I've made that have affected your life profoundly. However, such discussions require more time than we have at present. He rose from his chair, indicating the meeting was concluding. We shall arrange regular sessions, private lessons, if you will, to address these matters properly. For now, I suggest you focus on your training with Professor Uzumaki. As they prepared to leave, Dumbledore added, one more thing, Harry. The student defense group you've been leading, quite impressively, by all accounts, should continue and expand. In times like these, practical skills may make the difference between life and death for your classmates. Yes, sir, Harry replied, pleased by the official endorsement of the DA. Outside the office, Naruto fell into step beside Harry as they descended the spiral staircase. Well, that was interesting. Snape actually advocating for me to be informed. Definitely unusual, Harry agreed. People can surprise you, Naruto observed. Especially when facing common enemies. They walked in companionable silence for a moment before Harry asked, do you think we can really be ready? For whatever comes next, I mean. Naruto considered the question seriously. Ready? Perhaps not entirely. But prepared? Yes. There's a difference. Being ready suggests perfect certainty. Being prepared means having the tools, mindset, and support to face challenges as they arise. And you think I'm prepared? Getting there. Naruto smiled. You've come further in a few months than most would in years. Your connection to natural energy is deepening, your leadership abilities are developing, and you're finding balance within yourself. He stopped, turning to face Harry directly. Most importantly, you're not facing this alone. In my world, we have a saying, none of us is as strong as all of us. Remember that. As they parted ways for their respective classes, Harry reflected on Naruto's words. The solitary burden he'd carried for so long, the weight of being the boy who lived, the prophesied adversary of Voldemort, had subtly shifted. It wasn't that the responsibility had disappeared, but rather that he'd found ways to carry it without being crushed beneath it. Through natural energy, he'd connected to something larger than himself. Through the DA, he'd found purpose in helping others develop their own strength. And through Naruto's mentorship, he'd begun to understand that true power came not from special abilities or prophetic destiny, but from the harmony between one's inner nature and chosen purpose. Whatever came next, whether from Voldemort, Orochi, or the confluence of their world's dangers, Harry would face it not as a reluctant hero thrust into a role he never wanted, but as someone who had deliberately cultivated the strength to protect what mattered. Two powers, one purpose. Balance in duality. The essence of sage wisdom. Chapter 4, Sage of Two Worlds theme, integration of lessons and final confrontation conflict type, large-scale threat and resolution main plot points, Convergence launches an attack on Hogwarts, seeking an ancient artifact hidden in the castle. The Ministry finally acknowledges the threat. But too late. Harry successfully enters complete Sage mode during the battle. Students from DA use both magical defenses and basic chakra techniques Naruto taught them. Naruto and the Hogwarts teachers form a formidable defense. The leader of Convergence is revealed to have connections to both Voldemort and a past enemy of Naruto. A dramatic battle ensues with Harry and Naruto fighting side by side. Harry uses Sage mode to sense the castle's magic itself, finding a way to activate Hogwarts' ancient defenses. The attack is repelled, but the leader escapes, promising to return. Emotional aftermath as Naruto must return to his world, but promises to continue the alliance. Harry has grown into a more confident, centered person who now has new powers to face Voldemort's subplot elements. Evidence that convergence was just the first wave of a larger plan hints that Voldemort is seeking to learn about chakra setup for how this changes the coming war. A magical/chakra means of communication between worlds is established. This outline provides a framework for a crossover story that respects both universes while creating something new. It incorporates the requested elements like varied conflicts, strong antagonists, natural character development, and an escalating subplot. The chapters are structured to each have their own feel while maintaining narrative flow. Naruto at Hogwarts, a story outline. Thank you for this creative crossover concept. Before diving into the full story, here's my detailed outline for When Sage Arts Meet Wizardry, Naruto's Year at Hogwarts. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.